This meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is called to order. Thank you all for being here. We have a couple of new faces in the room. We have a brand new commissioner as of yesterday at 3:30, but not a new face to anyone in this room. Dr. Bob Smith has joined us as a commissioner on THEC, so welcome, Bob. We also have our new student representative. We have Commissioner Skylar Brackett, so welcome, Skylar. Before we get rolling, Commissioner Brackett, would you just kind of give everyone in here a rundown of what school you're in and what you're studying?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Skylar. I'm a senior at ETSU right now, and I'm pre-med. I'll be attending the Quillen College of Medicine next fall, and I'm excited to be here and get started.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much to the University of Memphis for hosting us here. We took a fantastic tour yesterday. If you all have not had a chance to tour this campus and specifically go to the virtual reality nursing program, I found it fascinating. I think many of you on the tour did as well. First up, we will call the roll. I believe Commissioner Matlock may be trying to join in. So, just a reminder, is he on the phone? He is, okay. Yeah. So, welcome. Just a reminder for you, Commissioner Matlock, please make sure that you state your name when you're called. So with that, I will ask Madam Secretary to call the roll.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Here.
Commissioner Allman.
Here.
Commissioner Brackett.
Here.
Commissioner Matlock.
Here, and I'm alone in the room.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Rader.
Here.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stafford.
Present.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Secretary Hargett. Here. Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Comptroller Mumpower. Commissioner Morrison.
Nathan James here.
Chairwoman, you have 13 voting members present and 14 members and a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Our first agenda item is the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. I would propose that we amend the agenda to add an action item to appoint our new student member, Skylar Brackett, to a committee. With no objections or questions, I will entertain a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended for today's meeting.
So moved. Second.
Excellent. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman. Commissioner Brackett.
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford.
Present. Aye. Sorry.
Commissioner Wood.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Next up, we get public comment. Dr. Gentile, do we have any public comment requests?
Chairwoman, no public comment today.
Okay. With no questions or objections, I will entertain a motion in a second to adopt the minutes from our August 15th, 2024 commission meeting. Okay, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman. Commissioner Brackett.
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale. Commissioner Smith.
Abstain.
Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wood. Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll kind of share a little bit of some things that I've been seeing recently, and I will want to acknowledge East Tennessee and the challenges they've run across with the recent floods. And while East Tennessee will work to rebuild from the recent devastating floods, we're also reminded of the strength and the resilience of all of our communities across our state. In the same spirit of perseverance, we must also address the challenge that impacts the future of our entire state, which is education, which is why we're all here today. As our economy grows, nearly 2/3 of the jobs will soon require some sort of post-secondary education or credential beyond high school. However, only 1 in 4 students who start high school currently go on to earn a post-secondary degree. And that's highlights a big need to really focus on robust pathways to success, regardless of where a student is coming from. This urgency is further underscored by our college going rate. For the class of 2023, 57% of students enrolled in post-secondary education immediately after high school. However, this rate does not account for those who pursue apprenticeships, enlist in the military, or have earned post-secondary credentials while in high school. So we don't fully have a full picture of what happens after high school, but 57% is good. It's just not where we need to be. Regardless, there's still a lot that we can do to ensure our students have the opportunity to reach their full potential. And I'll list off a few of these. One of them is leveraging data. For those of you that know me, I'm a bit of a data geek. I have no claims to actually know enough, but I know enough to make myself dangerous, right? I will share that leveraging data for decision-making is very important. I learned this week that THEC collects 1 billion points of data. That's a lot of data. And we have a big opportunity, of huge potential, to derive actionable insights for student access, enrollment, completion, and workforce alignment. But data decision-making is only as good as its inputs. So data quality becomes very, very important anywhere it's coming from across the post-secondary, K-12, or workforce environment. THEC, I also believe, needs to have some strong internal expertise to translate these data into meaningful strategies, policies, and optimizing resource allocation, as well as identifying key areas for intervention to improve educational outcomes. The second piece here is increasing access and removing barriers to completion. Actually, Commissioner Ragsdale brought this up in one of our committees yesterday. We talk a lot about enrollment. We don't talk as much about completion, and I think that's equally as important as we think about the workforce needs. But making college and career advising consistently available, starting even in middle as well as high school, through to a job or a career pathway, I think is crucial, particularly for students facing the greatest financial and systemic barriers. High-quality advising empowers students with an understanding for the opportunities available, what careers and jobs might exist for them in their communities or even at a broader level across the state. This also includes financial aid and state support, other state support. Tennessee has done amazing work to remove financial barriers, and I can speak specifically to Tennessee Promise. We all recognize the great work that has happened there. Also recently announced, which we heard yesterday, that we had the record-breaking number of students applying to Tennessee Promise this year, 67,000 applicants, which is phenomenal. To meet the needs of Tennessee employers over the next 10 years and beyond, providing additional support for students from under-resourced backgrounds is crucial. Ensuring more students earn post-secondary credentials is an economic imperative for all of Tennessee. Plus, a well-prepared workforce is going to attract investment and drive growth for our entire state. The third area of focus is strongly more aligned facility plans. I think every time we all get together, we seem to talk about capital, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not. We recognize that the buildings, the facilities, whether this is K-12 or higher ed, are in a slight moment of disrepair and have an opportunity to change. They need to be well-maintained, all of our facilities, updated facilities that are responsive to current and future educational demands. This requires a clear understanding of cost implications across regions, creating facilities cost index to guide equitable investment, and to ensure infrastructure can sustain high-quality learning environments statewide. I know we're gonna have a robust conversation today about what the committee discussed in regards to capital yesterday. Supporting these sorts of efforts is essential to ensure equitable access, relevant facilities, as well as data-driven insights in Tennessee's higher education landscape. With that, we'd like to move on to the institution report. And would to welcome Dr. Bill Hargrave, please.
Good morning, Chairwoman Scarlett, commissioners, THEC leaders, state leaders. Welcome to the University of Memphis Lambuth campus. I trust you've had a good day yesterday and finishing up the meetings today. It's a beautiful campus. We're glad to be in this part of the state. It certainly complements the work that we're doing in Memphis. I was asked to give the commissioners in particular an overview and an update of what we're trying to do at the University of Memphis. And so each of you should have at your desk the copy of our Ascend strategic plan. So if there's any doubt about what we are trying to do, you can find what we are doing there. And this is not a plan that was written to be put on a shelf. This was not something that we wrote to satisfy some accreditation requirement. This is our plan. This is our roadmap for the next several years, and not just for the next several years, but to set the university up for success 10, 20, 30 years in the future. It calls for us to do some things very different than what we've done in the past, to be bold and aggressive in some areas, and to rethink how we approach undergraduate and graduate education and research. So I want to hit a couple of highlights which I think are pivotal to what we're trying to do. First and foremost, you'll see in there that we start all of our discussions now on campus with outcomes in mind. We start with outcomes first, because outcomes then informs what you need to be doing to prepare your students, and then it informs what students you should be admitting and the criteria that you set for those. And I know that seems obvious to you all because we've talked about outcomes for a long time, but as you probably know as well, as in higher education, for the last 50 years probably it's been the other. We start with admissions and then we let somebody in and then we work them through the system. So we're changing the way that we approach things. That means that we now collect, for example, first destination data on every student. We know for every graduating student where they're going to work, how much they're making, or if they're going to graduate school, where are they going to graduate school, what are they studying. And that information, now we've collected the data for a year. When we get 2 years worth of data, we'll make that data available on our website for every prospective student to see. For every major that they want, that they're interested in, they can see what the outcome from that major is. And we will let that drive, and by the way, that's what's driving enrollment, right? Parents and students are choosing based upon those outcomes. Again, we start with that outcomes in mind. We work our way backwards. You know, that tells us what programs we ought to be offering. It tells us what type of student experience we should have, the things that we ought to do to engage our students. And as you all know as well, engaging students in today's environment is very difficult. We almost have to re-teach or have them relearn how to be engaged. Many of our students right in 2024 are finishing up, you know, that started in the beginning of the COVID in 2020. And engagement for them looks very different than what it did for the student who graduated in 2019. So in many respects, we're having to reteach and relearn that. And then finally, it drives the admissions. And one of the things that we noted when we took a deep dive into our own data, again, with this idea of outcomes and what's happening with our students. Why are they not graduating at the rate that we want? Why are they not getting the jobs or going to graduate school that we expect them to? And if you work it back, you find that it starts with the students that we're admitting. And we had, at the University of Memphis, allowed over several years the quality of the student applicants and those admitted to decline to the point where we were not comfortable that we were admitting students who were going to be successful. Now, one could say, but under the heading of access, you ought to be admitting every student. And that's only partially true. Is it really fair to admit a student who you believe is not going to be successful? And we said, no, it is not. It is not fair to admit a student who is not going to be successful. When that student comes into our university and we know they're going to struggle and they fail out after that first semester, first year, who wins? No one wins. The student certainly does not. They've incurred debt or at least opportunity costs. You've destroyed their confidence. The likelihood that they ever come back to university is near zero. So we made the conscious decision this year for this fall class that we would amp up our admissions criteria. Now, you will see it in our plan. We're not going to get there overnight. We can't jump from 5 or 6 ACT points or a half a point in GPA, but we'll get there. And so we made that conscious decision, knowing in a time that it is tough to get students. Chairwoman Scarlett, as you were talking about fewer and fewer students going, and that we know the enrollment cliff is coming. So, some would question, why are you raising the standards at a time when it's going to be harder to get students? And the simple answer is this: it's the right thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And I want to give you a bit of perspective on what that looks like. Our incoming freshman class this year was down 23%. And now that made headlines. But what you did not see was these panicked headlines of University of Memphis enrollment down 23%, president announces budget cuts and slashes to programs, and 80 faculty positions gone. You didn't see any of that because we planned for it. We knew that by raising the academic qualifications of our incoming freshman class, that our class would be smaller. And we prepared for it. We budgeted for it. Now, it's certainly not easy when you take a budget hit based upon that. But I want to put in perspective on what that freshman class looks like. The previous year, we had 19,000 applications, and we admitted about 16,000. This year, we had 21,000 applications. Good news, right? Applications up. We admitted 11,000 of those. So a significant difference. As a result, our freshman class is a much stronger class, and we know then that will feed into retention, progression toward degree, and graduation. Now, obviously, we don't just sit back and say, well, let's take a 23% cut in our freshman class. There's mitigation strategies that we're utilizing and getting more aggressive on. First of all, we're expanding our geographic footprint beyond the state. We serve the Memphis Shelby County area. About 60% of our students come from that area. About 85% of our students come from the state of Tennessee. And we'll continue to serve those areas, but we have to get outside of that area to draw in more students from out of state. Again, not to trade off in-state or local students, we can serve those. And as we think forward to a declining 18-year-old population in this country, the pie is going to get smaller for everybody. And it's going to be a zero-sum game. Actually, it's going to be a shrinking zero-sum game for states to attract talent. And we need to contribute to the brain gain by bringing in out-of-state students, because we know from our historical data that 90% of the out-of-state students that we bring into our university stay in the state of Tennessee. That's how we help build the workforce and bring more students in. So we're going to try to do our part and certainly help with our enrollment to bring those students in. We also got very aggressive in working with our two-year system and our TCAT to make pathways there. And so one of the things that we did this year, when a student, those 10,000 students who were not admitted, they didn't get a letter that said, too bad, sorry, you're denied. We said, we don't feel like you're ready to be successful here on our main campus. We want you to go to the two-year school. If you're a Tennessee citizen, it's going to be free for you. We're going to help you, guide you, go over there, and when you're ready, we're going to bring you back in. You don't have to reapply. We're trying to make it very, very, very simple. Had a great meeting with Chancellor Tidings yesterday, and there's a lot more that we can do there. And in fact, I think across the board, we all from the four-year institutions must do a better job of working with our two-year schools throughout the state. That's just one example. And I know my time is short, so I'll move on from that. But as you can tell, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we will be doing, and certainly we're passionate about making sure that our students are successful. I want to talk about research for a second, because as an R1 institution, we are very proud of the fact that since obtaining R1 status a couple of years ago, we have doubled our research in the past 2 years. Now, that's the good news. The bad news, and I think you all may have had a conversation around it yesterday, is we have no more space for research growth from just pure research space on campus. To keep up with our research needs, we need about 311,000 square feet is our estimate based upon where we're at in the projected growth. We have about 179,000 square feet. Less than 4% of our space on campus is dedicated to research. Yet 15% of our budget now is brought in by research, and we continue to bring in those dollars. We must invest in research. We must invest in the facilities for our research, Otherwise, we've hit the ceiling and we can't grow. And for anybody who would like to come to campus, I'd be happy to show you how creative our faculty have been in finding research space on campus, including taking over a bathroom and turning it into research space. And you can imagine bringing the DOD in and saying, install one is research project one. So we have been creative, but we need to be better. And you know, the state with 2 public R1 institutions needs to be investing in the research. And I know that's something that is not as straightforward and easy as saying we're investing in classrooms, investing in students, but it's critically important, especially as we try to attract more companies to the area, and we provide the R&D capability. On the issue of facilities, we have a growing issue, and that is deferred maintenance. Our deferred maintenance is now over $500 million and growing every year, and we've got to find some way to get that under control, and it's a continuous battle for us. And finally, I'll end with this on just the things that we're working on. Safety and security continues to be something that is a priority for us. We want our employees and our students and our visitors to be safe and feel safe on campus. And I'm very grateful that in the past couple of years, the state has invested about $13 million through 3 appropriations, and we have made good use of that money. Across our campus, you'll see more cameras, more fencing, more officers, more police cars, and just recently launched our Crime Information Center, which is an amazing facility which gives us capability to see things in real time, but also uses AI to predict things before they actually happen. And it has made a significant difference. All of those investments have on our campus. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, President Hargrave. Any questions? Yes, Mr. James.
Thank you. One of the pieces that you hit on was that relationship with community colleges, and I found your presentation to be very impressive. We got into a conversation yesterday, some of the members and some of the presidents on the reverse transfer process, and I wondered, do you have a program in place, because we've got some awesome community colleges, and sometimes some of the opportunities that folks have they don't quite know about, but that reverse transfer can be made pretty seamless between university like yours and the local community college. Is that something that you've got laid out so that the students who transfer in, they know about that and it kind of automatically happens? Because I'm seeing that it's somewhat hit and miss in some places, and I was just curious if that was something that you'd...
The formal program that we have for our students is called One Step Closer. So if they enter the One Step Closer program, we advise them working with our 2-year schools. Now, primarily, right now, most of it's through Southwest, right, because they're right there in our backyard. But the One Step Closer program, we advise them, we work with Southwest, we make it very seamless for them to go over there, to come back, and the reverse degree from Southwest is part of that program. So if they go over there for a semester and we feel that, okay, you've taken these classes and now you're ready to come back, then after they've taken the requisite number of hours, they can go back and reverse and get that degree. Yes, and that's spelled out in that program.
One quick question. You mentioned 90% of out-of-state students stay. Is that the UM and kind of just alone, or is that a broader statement across the state?
That's our stats. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a quick question for you. Talking about the physical safety, tell me a little bit about cyber safety.
I would have to defer to my CIO, although I guess just at a broad statement, as you might suspect, we are constantly under attack from, on a daily basis from things that are trying to infiltrate our systems. We spend a lot of time and energy on that. And I think our folks do a really good job. One of the kind of the running jokes that we have is, our IT folks are all the time sending out these phishing things to see if anybody bites. And I'm always very proud to, because there's a button that says, I think this is phishing, so you click on it and it pops up, oh, congratulations, you detected, a phishing scam that we sent out as a test. And I failed one recently, so I had to own up to that I had, it looked legit, and I went through and I got the message that says, you failed miserably. But I mean, it just shows, I mean, our folks are, I shouldn't admit that, should I? But our folks they're really trying, and it's a constant battle, and it's one of those things we continue to have to spend more and more money just on that part, and it's a good question because we think about our physical security, but the cybersecurity, at least in a short period of time, could be more detrimental financially than any single physical event.
Well, thank you so much. I really do
Thank you.
applaud your focus on the seamless pathways work. We've had a lot of conversations about how that can really be impactful for a student and also broader for their families too, as they see the opportunities in post-secondary. So certainly applaud that.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Wonderful. Next, we have our Executive Director's Report. So I'll turn to Dr. Stephen Gentile, Executive Director for THEC. You are recognized.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. So good to see you all today, and two new faces on the board as well as Skylar Brackett and Commissioner Bob Smith as well. It's an honor to be in front of you today. Before I get to my presentation, I want to thank the presidents who are here today, President Hardgrave for hosting, Rick Bloomer as well, the COO of the Lambuth campus, President Mike Licari from Austin P, Chancellor Tidings, President Boyd, Senior Vice President of Institute of Agriculture, Keith Carver. We'll hear from him later today. And also, if I can thank for their hospitality at Jackson State Community College, Lynn Hines, Director of Business Operations, for being able to get Bob Smith here, endorsed and ready to be here to sign his oath. Thank you to her of being on board at 8 a.m. this morning. This afternoon, right after this board meeting, we'll be going to Jackson State for a tour of Jackson State Community College. If you are able and have time, I look forward to seeing you there today. And one more note, a personal privilege. Sometimes she watches, sometimes she doesn't. In case she is, happy anniversary, 15th anniversary to my wife, Solveig. We'll celebrate later today. 15, okay. So my presentation today is comprised of three different components. Two of them are fueled by requests from board members. Commissioner Wood asked me if I can go into financial aid and the operations therein. Commissioner Ragsdale asked about college access initiatives. And I have our Senior Director of College Access Initiatives here to give an overview, and then we'll dive even deeper at our February board meeting as well. And then we have a 14th day enrollment update that we give all the time. Paige Elliott, our Senior Director of Research and Strategy, will do so. On financial aid, the picture ahead of us right now, I'm going to go over the basic mechanics of our financial aid program, how the money works at a macro level, and then go into some themes and conversations that we've had with people in the field and presidents about potential improvements over time to financial aid. So the financial picture ahead right now. When we think about financial aid at THEC, and a reminder, THEC is the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, our financial aid arm that has its own board separate from this one. I serve as Executive Director of THEC as well. When we think of financial aid, we think of financial aid fueled by lottery scholarships, lottery dollars, and financial aid fueled by state appropriation, recurring general fund appropriation. Those are like TSAA, Tennessee Student Assistance Award, the need-based grant that goes to our students. Today, I'm focusing on the lottery portion of that. With regards to lottery, we have over $400 million going into the lottery system, $470 million. That includes $350 million for the HOPE scholarships and the HOPE add-ons, $24 million in Promise, $20 million in Tennessee Reconnect, $59 million, this is last year, in dual enrollment grants. I'll talk about that in a second. And then other scholarships like $500,000 going to Tennessee Step Up program, a program you'll learn more about at the tail end of this agenda. The funding that we have in front of us right now, the lottery scholarships pay for all of those, and any excess lottery revenue, so above expenditures to meet that year's demand, goes straight into the Tennessee Promise Endowment. We've had the Tennessee Promise Endowment for just over 10 years now, starting at about $360 million, and it has been growing over years under the stewardship of the Treasurer and the Tennessee Promise State Board Endowment. There are many states that have a Promise program like we do here in Tennessee. No state has an endowment that ensures its fidelity. We are very close to that endowment being fully funded, meaning it is going to pay out in its annual yield the Tennessee Promise needs today, and we can project forward that that'll be the case in the future. It is a statutory requirement that any excess lottery goes into that endowment. When the state decides that is fully funded, the state may decide to divert that back into the lottery fund, lottery account. A few years ago, the state allowed for sports wagering, online betting, as an example. In statute right now, 85% of that sports wagering funding goes to higher education, into the lottery fund, lottery stream, and to Tennessee Promise as well. Once the endowment is fully funded, that money could go elsewhere. Over the years, we've seen bills come forward that might direct that funding, that 85% of sports wagering, to early childhood education, as an example. A bill yesterday related to vouchers made the news that puts that full 85% towards K through 12 school construction. So there are possibilities of that funding going away from higher education to other sources. In addition, every year we have estimates of excess lottery revenue above expenditures. We don't want to be the opposite, expenditures above revenue. In our forecast right now, we could have upwards of 30% of excess revenue, $30 million, in excess revenue over expenditures in the next fiscal year. That might change, however. The State Funding Board will convene on November 25th to set that pathway forward for the next year to decide how much money we should budget for lottery. And lottery revenue is down this year. One other consideration I want to put in front of you is the continued and rapid growth in dual enrollment grant costs. Dual enrollment has greatly expanded in the last couple of years, and we have gone from just 2 years ago having $29 million in dual enrollment grants to now having $59 million in dual enrollment grants. 50,000 students in total, up from 32,000 students in high school, are now taking advantage of dual enrollment. That is a good news story. It's also sparking a lot of us to do more evaluations and have conversations with State Board of Ed, Department of Education, TBR, and our universities onto the value of dual enrollment to make sure that dual enrollment is being used in a good way. The opposite side of that coin, however, is how much further will those costs increase for dual enrollment? Going up $30 million on a smaller base in the last 2 years, will it be going up further in the next year or 2 years? We're working with the Department of Education to determine the saturation point across the state so that we have a better idea and can project forward those growths and costs. No matter what, however, we need to be ready to have ideas for that money, for that excess revenue. And because if we don't, others will, as we've heard, as I mentioned earlier. After the last commission meeting back in August, immediately thereafter, I convened with my staff, all the presidents here in Tennessee. And we had a conversation about financial aid and how we could better the program overall and proposals that we might put forward to the administration and to General Assembly. I want to take the next few minutes to talk through some of the burgeoning themes we heard in that conversation. Theme 1, TCAT simplification. If you are an 18-year-old high school, if you're 20 years old, if you're 23 years old, the financial aid that's coming your way for TCATs can be a bit confusing. First of all, you are eligible for Tennessee Promise. You can use Tennessee Promise, that's great. You're eligible for Tennessee Reconnect if you're an independent student, or if you're age 23 and above. But you also received Wilder NAFI, a grant that's up to $2,000 that can go towards your education, no matter how old you are. We have an idea in front of you right here, which is about merging those existing financial aid programs into one, and having it be a scholarship that every student knows that they'll have going towards and to cover their tuition and fees at a TCAT. The beauty of this is that this dollar would drop before other state aid. Before a student receives the need-based aid of Student Assistance Award or a federal Pell Grant, they'll have their tuition covered with this block grant. Our students who have the most need will then be able to use their need-based aid, Pell, TSAA, to cover their equipment costs, as an example. And equipment at our TCATs can be quite pricey. The estimated cost of this is $13 million, and it would affect about 11,000 students. Looking to some of the technical nitty-gritty details of our HOPE scholarship, other themes we proposed could improve persistence, modify the HOPE GPA bench requirements. We right now require students to have a 275 at the 24 and 48, and to increase their GPA to a 3.0 at the 72 mark, so they can graduate with a 3.0 from college. If they don't do that, they lose their HOPE scholarship. We're in a state that needs 10,000 engineers in the near future. I'm willing to bet that our engineering industry would like to have engineers that have a 2.85 GPA or a 2.95 GPA. Why revoke from those students something at that last minute that could disrupt their ability to complete college? So the proposal here in front of us is a 2.75 GPA as the benchmark to maintain throughout their entire existence at that school. Is a $28 million, and it would affect about 5,400 students. Another proposal that we heard from the community colleges is a $500 stipend for all Promise students to help cover costs that go above tuition and fees. This is 7.1. Many students start off with a full-time load, and for whatever reason that semester, perhaps it's a natural disaster, perhaps it's a need to go back to the work for just that semester, needs to drop from the full-time to part-time within that semester. If they do that, they could lose their financial aid. A proposal like this would allow for changes of that enrollment status within a semester without having to be appealed. The student would then be expected to do full-time that next semester. That's a 7.4 GPA. TBR has been making this request for some years now, changed the Reconnect age from 23 to 21. When Reconnect started about 6 years ago, the requirement was any student who is independent, and age 24 was that minimum. And there are other things that make you independent, having a child, as an example, being a veteran. But a few years ago, that age declined to 23. This proposal would push it down to 21. It's $5 million. These are the ones that I'm most intrigued by. We have the HOPE Scholarship, which for our universities is $4,500 this first 2 years. There are some add-ons to the HOPE Scholarship that allow for extra funding for students who might be of low income, as an example. An Aspire Award is an example of that. The Aspire Award will give students right now an extra $1,500 at their university, or an extra $500 per year at a community college. The requirement for that is an adjusted gross income of $36,000 for your family. That has been set at $36,000 for the last 20 years. It has not increased over that time. Had it increased on par with inflation, it would be a $60,000 threshold. And you can see in our data how every year fewer and fewer students qualify for Aspire. That's to be expected if it's not adjusted for inflation. If we were to adjust it for inflation, the cost would be $13 million, and it would impact 10,000 students in Tennessee. Commissioner Allman, the next two kind of touch on conversations you and I have had for some time now. There's another HOPE supplement called the GAMS, the General Assembly Merit Scholarship. It is $1,000 per year, or $500 per semester, and it is eligible for students who have a 3.75 high school GPA and an ACT of 29, so the top merit-worthy students. Right now, if a student meets that threshold, or if they're low income, I should say, below 36,000, the student has to choose which one to use. They can't get both the Aspire and the GAMS. Proposal here that we have is to merge those together. If you qualify for both, you get both, and that's a $2.5 million expenditure. But to our conversation specifically, Commissioner Allman, that you and I have had over the last year and a half, she looks around West Tennessee, and she knows students who are going to University of Memphis, who are going to UT Martin, across the state, but she knows a lot of students who are going to Ole Miss, much to her chagrin, going to Auburn, going to Alabama, and she's brought this up to me several times. We've heard this from some of our universities, UT being chief among them, that we are perhaps losing more students to other schools in the South who are greatly discounting their tuition. Could we potentially increase the General Assembly Merit Scholarship, which again is at $500 per semester, increase it up by $500, $1,000, or $1,500 extra per semester? That's a price range of $8.1 to $24.6 million. And finally, to expand our support for veterans, veterans in Tennessee can attend our community colleges and our universities if they are honorably discharged and get up to $2,000 per year. It is not open to TCATs at this time. And so this proposal is a simple one. Make sure that something that's available for community colleges and universities is also open to TCATs. It's a $1.5 million expenditure, impacting about 750 students. The total cost of these ideas are $102.3 million, asterisk, these are all estimates, and conservative estimates. And we put them forward for conversation, for discussion to anyone that we can, just so we know that we have a portfolio of ideas to pull from when we have those conversations. And a lot of this that I put in front of you, like increasing Aspire to $60,000, are scalable. Maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's $55,000 or $45,000. But point being, we've been working with the higher ed community. We've been working internally in our staff to come up with these ideas, and I'm happy to have further conversations and discussion here too.
Thank you very much, and for your great explanation of the ideas that I know a lot of thought were put into. Earlier this week in the State Funding Board meeting, we heard from the director of the lottery. We recognize that lottery revenues have been on the decline recently, which makes every lottery dollar even more valuable than it was before. How have you personally, or have we as a board shared these ideas, this message, whether it's with the governor, the General Assembly, or others, through budget hearings? How are you getting this message out there about the concept of using these lottery dollars for higher education and making known these good ideas that would be fairly turnkey?
Right. Thank you, sir, for that question. We have been in discussion with the administration on these ideas specifically, and have shared them starting a couple of months ago on that. I've had ongoing good conversations to that regard. We also have had conversations right now with Senate Finance Chair Bill Watson. House Finance Chair is not filled at this time, but I've shared some of these ideas too. It's about ongoing communication and conversation, and also working with the presidents behind us as well as they have opportunity to do so too. But sir, to your point, we need as an agency, as a commission, on a whole bunch of higher ed policy ideas to be more forthcoming with them. And because if we don't, others will. And so we've got to get out with these ideas as we have been the last few months.
To follow up on Comptroller Mumpower's comments, and I delivered this sermon yesterday, so I apologize in advance to those who had to hear it or have to hear it for the second time. I think we have done a really good job in this state of providing higher education access to students, whether it be at our TCATs, our community colleges, or four-year universities. And sometimes I know it's very easy to beat ourselves up over things, but there comes a point in time I think we need to do some celebrating. And right now, it makes me feel very proud when folks from across the country want to come and see what we're doing in Tennessee as it relates to student access. So I know a lot of folks have worked on that for a long time, and it's paying great dividends. Our second point, which you just addressed, I think needs to be our next big goal, is student success and completion. And we have a lot of programs out there that are what I would call experimental or model programs that are showing some tremendous successes. And when we can help students beyond just the tuition area, we are seeing them achieve some really good things. And that's what I think we should be advocating for at THEC, and I'm glad that you're doing that. So I just wanted to make those comments, and also I want to thank some of our private sector partners, folks from across Tennessee, whether it be Tennessee Achieves, the Ayers Foundation, other foundations who have been such good partners to us in this and are doing some very strong work to show what we can achieve when we work together. So great job on the access piece, and now I think we need to follow that up on the success piece so that every person who attends one of our institutions has the best chance possible they can have to succeed. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Please, Commissioner Perry.
Dr. Gentile, thanks again for your presentation. I have kind of a twofold question. You noted earlier in your presentation the growth in dual enrollment. Is there any relationship between that growth and participation in AP and IB courses? And kind of the second part of that is, do you see a relationship between participation in kind of one of those two sets of things and college access, persistence, attainment?
Yeah, great question. I might even turn to Nathan James as well, Commissioner James, to talk to some of this as well if you have anything to add to it. But the conversation of EPSOs, so early post-secondary opportunities for our students, AP, IB, dual enrollment, dual credit, that one right now is rife for lots more attention, and it's getting a lot right now to answer those questions. An example, how many students are persisting from Austin Peay's dual enrollment and matriculating into their institution? I had a conversation just yesterday with the provost there, Maria Cronley, about that, and to be able to better track that, it's high. How many students are from community college are sticking at the community college? You know, those are answers I don't have in front of you right now, and I will share with you after that, and working with Chancellor Tidings and Dr. Russ Deaton. But there are 2 points, 2 reasons to have dual enrollment. There are 1,000 reasons to have dual enrollment, but let's talk about the 2 that come most to mind. One is to increase access to higher education. Students who didn't think that they were going to go to college, give them a taste of it. And in Tennessee, you can do it as early as 9th grade in our TCATs now. Give them a taste and maybe even get a credential while they're in high school, but let them show that they can go on to college. The second reason is to give those students who are going to go to college an affordable, upfront way of doing that. Get some of those credits done sooner. What we need to do a better job here at THEC and the state of Tennessee with our partners is to better zero in on which of those 2 is most important, and are we succeeding in doing that? Are we succeeding in getting students to matriculate into college who would not have otherwise? We are in a research project right now with TERA, not that TERA, the Tennessee Education Research Alliance, looking at just that right now, and we'll have more answers to your questions. We do know for that second point, those who are going on to college already, who are taking those EPSOs, There could be some competition between, is it AP Access for All? Is it the dual credit that is available at a number of high schools? Is it dual enrollment? What flavor works best? So I don't have a complete answer for you, but we are looking into it.
Dr. Gentile, following up on Comptroller Mumpower's question and your response, understand that there's a lot being done by you and the rest of the team. What should we, this board, be doing? What action needs to be taken, or what help can we provide you?
I think pointing us in the direction, say like the Access Academics and Success Committee, as Commissioner Ragsdale mentioned, highlighting things that we're not thinking about in financial aid that we perhaps should, bringing the industry perspective to these conversations. The things I just shared up here with you can be very technical. Are there other things that we're not thinking of? But I also think it's incumbent on us to get this document to you all so that you can have these talking points ready to go when you're meeting with local officials too. Things that we are thinking of, if you can help us get out the word on this and reflect with, when you meet with University of Memphis President Hargrave, and if you hear something different, what more can we pivot and add to this to help us be the vocal on this, and also to be the ears on this would be helpful to us.
Any other questions for Dr. Gentile?
I'd just like to say thank you, Dr. Gentile, for presenting this information. I think very helpful. And then to the university and college presidents in the room, the ideas behind this are incredibly powerful. So I think as we think about the potential around funding through the lottery program, I think the opportunity is tremendous. And so I hope we have, I think, time and the ability to really make sure that we're thinking about this long term as how we manage our resources. This is, to me, is an incredible opportunity to open up more access.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to hand it over to our Senior Director of College Access Initiatives, Dwayne Gregg. 2 months ago, we received the news that we received Gear Up 4.0. Gear Up 4.0 is a program we've been doing, Gear Up, for the last nearly 20 years. And Bob just pumped your fist. When he was the executive director, he got this application going. So really, this is all about you, Bob. I just want to thank you. I want to thank you because the state has, the feds are giving the state $35 million and to greatly support counties across Tennessee. To receive this grant, it was a competitive grant. To receive it, you had to have nothing short of a perfect score. And Dwayne Gregg and Brett Gibson and their whole team made that happen. I just want to thank them on behalf of Tennesseans and our institutions. I wanted Dwayne to give you an overview of this program and to connect it to our other college access programs too. Dwayne?
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Gentile, Madam Chair, Commission members, and guests for this opportunity to briefly share about the Gear Up Tennessee grant and about college access in general across the state of Tennessee. Gear Up stands for Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. As Dr. Gentile stated, it's a discretionary grant program from the U.S. Department of Education designed to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to enter and succeed in post-secondary education. Just as a quick reminder, Gear Up falls within the College Access and Outreach Bureau at THEC. Gear Up is a part of this bureau, but it also funds College for TN, as you see there. It also funds the Path to College events, and it provides staff support for the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange. Also, Advise Tennessee was created from best practices about 8 years ago that were established from Gear Up Tennessee as well. As Dr. Gentile mentioned, and I think you all received a press release a couple of months ago, in September, the Tennessee Higher Education was awarded our 4th Gear Up grant. Since starting in 2005, the previous 3 Gear Up grants had provided direct services to over 73,000 students across the state, and statewide services, the Path to College, the College for TN, things like that I mentioned previously, to hundreds of thousands of students across the state of Tennessee. These grants have served some of our most at-risk counties and helped move their college-going rates to above the state average. In some cases, the college-going rates increased by over 20 percentage points over that 7-year period, with an average of increase of over 10 points across all those that were served by Gear Up grants during that period of time. This grant, Gear Up Tennessee 4.0, is a total of $35 million over the 7-year period. The counties selected for direct services in the grant were the counties with the lowest college-going rates for the 3-year period before we wrote the proposal, as well as all of the high schools and feeder middle schools from those counties had to have free and reduced lunch rates of at least 50%. The counties that were selected were Bedford, Cumberland, Granger, Jackson, and Monroe counties. The Gear Up model serves every single student that is in the target grade at these particular schools, but additional services and individualized support will be provided to those students that are currently underrepresented in higher education in the state of Tennessee. As you can see from this graph here, in order to maximize the impact that this grant will have on these schools and these communities, we will provide services to 2 different cohorts: senior classes at these schools, these high schools, for 6 years, and college freshmen for 5 years, which goes back to Commissioner Ragsdale, as you were talking about student success and how important it is to continue to serve students through college. To just kind of paint a brief picture of what that will look like, we will start grant implementation in these schools in January with the 7th grade cohort at these schools, starting in their just with 7th graders for the first cohort, serving those students through their first year of college. Fall of 2025, we will start serving the next group, the next cohort group, starting in 7th grade, and they will be served to the very end of the grant, which will be through their senior year of high school. At the same time, next fall of 2025, we will start serving seniors at every single high school, and we will serve every single senior class until the end of the grant through their first year of college. The total number of students that we directly serve by this grant will be 9,000 students across the 7 years. This graph just kind of gives you a quick display across the state of Tennessee, the counties that will be served, the high schools in those counties, because in some counties, every high school was not eligible based upon their free and reduced lunch rate. So in some counties, we're serving every high school in the county, and some we're not. And then all of the feeder middle schools that will be serving, that feed into those high schools, again, starting with 7th grade. So we will be in the middle schools for a total of 3 years. Very quickly, the federal objectives for the grant, number 1, is to increase academic preparation for both high school and for college for these students, to increase the high school graduation rate and to increase the college-going rates at these schools, to increase the educational expectations and knowledge of both post-secondary education and opportunities and financial aid for these students as well as their families, and finally, to increase the college-going culture at these schools that we are serving through the framework of Gear Up Tennessee. Gear Up grants are required to be guided by a logic model, a research-driven theoretical framework. Gear Up Tennessee is based upon research by Kurlander, Reed, and Hunt on college readiness, and the services within the framework will fall under the Think, Know, Act, and Go themes. Think is when we help students evolve their aspirations and college-going beliefs. Know is when we'll help students be prepared academically to succeed in high school and college. Act is when we will work with students and their families to complete the particular steps that they will need to for college acceptance, college enrollment. And then Go is when we'll help students and their families develop skills for self-regulation and resilience, because we all know they will get into situations both in high school and college that things will not go their way, whether it's personally or academically, and so they will have the resilience to continue on and persist in those situations and eventually seek their degree that they sought after, rather than dropping out as many do. This slide just highlights just some of the different services that Gear Up will be serving in these direct service schools, that the Gear Up will be providing, divided by the different themes that I mentioned in the previous slide. This will be everything from career exploration to campus visits, tutoring, mentoring, advising, ACT prep, financial aid workshops, summer melt services, services during the first year of college for these students, and as well as family services, family counseling, and family workshops themselves. Since its inception, Gear Up Tennessee has also been served as the incubator for college access best practices and strategies for the state of Tennessee. They served as the convener for statewide college access initiatives and the provider for statewide college access resources and training. Gear Up Tennessee and the Access and Outreach Bureau regularly convene and collaborate with the Counseling, CTE, and Academic Affairs divisions at the Tennessee Department of Education, AIRS and Tennessee Achieves, NISWANGR, school counseling programs at many of our universities and post-secondary institutions, TRIO programs, the Talent Search, Upward Bound, Student Support Services across the state of Tennessee, school counselors, PEF in Chattanooga, Seeding Success in Memphis, and many other college access programs that are doing similar work across the state of Tennessee. This page highlights just some of the work that Gear Up has done and our Access and Outreach Bureau has done related to statewide initiatives and services, not just those direct service schools that I was mentioned previously and that are part of this Gear Up grant as well. The first one is the Path to College event, where currently almost 500,000 students participate each year. These are students from elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools participating in events like College Signing Day, College Application and Exploration Month, FAFSA Frenzy, and College Planning Night that is typically for juniors. The College for TN website, the free web-based platform for career, financial aid, college planning that students can participate in anywhere across the state of Tennessee. Our Student Success course that high school students can take for high school credit that will prepare them for college. Our Next Guides that we started developing 6 years ago. There's Next Guides for middle schools as well as individual guides for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. That's a booklet of 30 to 60 pages, depending on what grade level they're in, that prepares them and their families and parents for what's next that they need to do to get to that, whatever that next grade level or next level that they're in to prepare for college. And then we also have a family guide as well. That is a part of the Next Guides. Finally, Tennessee and Gear Up Tennessee and our Access and Outreach Bureau provides a lot of training across the state of Tennessee for school counselors and other college access programs. Coincidentally, we started about 2 weeks ago providing a boot camp in college access and financial aid across the state of Tennessee, starting at ETSU and moving west. So it actually just turns out, we're training about, in this 2-week period of time, we're training about 400 school counselors and college access professionals on college access and financial aid. Coincidentally, today we have a group that we're training at Jackson State, and tomorrow we have a group that we're training at Southwest Community College from those regions. Just a few unique things that I wanted to highlight about this Gear Up proposal. The first one is a partnership with Navigate Reconnect. So we're not just going to serve those individual students that I mentioned in those cohort groups and those seniors, but serving their parents and families as well and educating them along the process. One is we know that if a parents understand what college going looks like and how that can impact their students, that they'll become an advocate for them going to college. The other part of that is we know that it's an opportunity with Reconnect. It's an opportunity for those parents and families to think about going to or going back to college as well. So we're going to partner with Navigate Reconnect on that as a way not to just impact those students, but really to impact the entire school and community in that way. Every single Gear Up school and community and county that I mentioned will be required to have a college access steering committee. Those steering committee will be composed of people in the K-12 sector, higher ed, nonprofits, business, manufacturing, government, a little bit of everything, so that they have buy-in engagement into this college-going process at their school. It's also for sustainability. So Gear Up will be gone in 7 years, but that steering committee can continue to be a part of that process and that buy-in. We have a couple of new positions that are part of this grant that have not been a part of previous grants. So we have always had, as a part of Gear Up, in those schools that we're working in, we have an embedded site coordinator. So for this particular Gear Up grant, we'll have a total of 18 site coordinators at those direct target service schools. In addition to that, we will be hiring 3 regional college access outreach specialists that will have a region of schools that they'll be serving They won't be embedded into just a single school, but they will be providing resources, training, best practices. They will help them implement those different Path to College events that I mentioned. My goal is that they will serve 10 to 20 schools, each regional specialist, and they'll do that for a year or two as they're training school counselors and other people at those schools, and then they'll move on to another group of 10 to 20 high schools. The plan of doing that is by the end of this grant, the end of the 7 years, that we will have covered every single high school across the state with this training and resources that does not already have some sort of embedded college access professional, whether it's from Gear Up or Advise or AIRS or Tennessee Achieves or NISWANG or anyone else. The last position that we will have is we're going to be hiring a college access alignment coordinator position. As a couple of you have mentioned, there's a lot of college access work that's going on across the state of Tennessee that's doing a lot of really good things. So having someone who can collaborate and convene with all of these different stakeholders, make sure that we're all on the same page, kind of rowing in the same direction, sharing of best practices, and making the greatest impact for the state of Tennessee as we're working together in that way. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that Gear Up requires an evaluation plan that has a rigorous formative and summative approach with both quantitative and qualitative analytics. We will conduct our own internal evaluation and analysis. We will also be hiring an external evaluator that will be with us for the entire 7 years. We will also be implementing many services that have already been identified as best practices from What Works Clearinghouse. The purpose of this extensive evaluation is how we are able to best identify what services and strategy are working best, what implementation models are working and most effective, and how to make the most impact on the students and schools that we serve. Most importantly, this is not just for Gear Up and for these target schools that I've identified, but we then share these best practices, resources, and strategies with other programs, educators, and college access professionals and school counselors across the state of Tennessee. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Any questions?
You mentioned as far as training with our counselors and working with our counselors, how often do you work with the counselors in the school systems as far as making sure that they're well aware of all the changes? And also, does that include public and private schools too?
It does include public and private schools. So let me answer that in a couple of different ways. So one of the things that we provide is webinars, and we provide 2 webinars a month that are usually attended by 100 to 200 school counselors and college access professionals. Events like these boot camps that we're doing right now, where we work all the way, physically all the way across the state, we primarily are doing in the fall of each year. We do it at request at any particular time. And then what we plan to do in the spring is kind of go back through, and there's areas that just it was a bad time for certain groups of people or organizations or counties. So we plan to kind of go back and kind of fill the gaps in with the spring with another working across the state model. In addition to that, just focused on our financial aid, then we have our outreach team that providing outreach resources throughout the years to all of those schools that they work with as well. We're also looking at doing a few new things like implementing a college access podcast in early 2025 for school counselors and college access professionals. So continuing to provide that training and those opportunities. We have newsletters that we send out once or twice a month to all of the school counselors and college access professionals. At this point, the newsletters go out to about 400 to 500 students, counselors and college access professionals, just providing resources and updates as things constantly change and evolve, especially we're talking about financial aid and FAFSAs and things like that.
Any other questions? I want to bring something up that came up in our meeting yesterday. Specifically, Commissioner Ragsdale was talking about helping us understand, have a broader understanding of AIRS and their work they're doing and the work that Tennessee Achieves is doing, and I think you mentioned it earlier as well. It would be interesting to look at the number of students we have across the state who are in these high-need kind of groups or populations. Where's Gear Up serving? Where's AIRS serving? Where's Tennessee Achieves or Advise TN, NISWANG? Is everyone who needs to be served getting served? Where are those gaps or where are those opportunities? And same thing with the high school and post-secondary counselors. I understand every high school should have some sort of college and career counselor. Are they fully focused on that work, or are they focused on other things? And the same thing happens, a question I would have at the post-secondary institution. are they leaning into people that are currently full-time on staff, or are they leaning into other supports like Tennessee Achieves and stuff? I know there's a lot of interest in this as we want to continue growing enrollment and completion. I think there's just a question, at least in what I heard yesterday, and my own interest is understanding where there are too many maybe in one area and not enough in another. I think that'd be interesting for us to find out.
Absolutely, great point and question, and we have been currently conducting that analysis, hopefully over the next couple of months. So like one of the things that I mentioned was the new college access outreach specialist. We need to know where all those gaps are so we know what schools and areas they need to serve. As several of you know, Advise Tennessee is currently looking at what schools they are serving and what schools they need to serve in the future and those sorts of things. So we are currently looking at that. You both are absolutely right as well, that every model looks a little different. So for example, the Nice Water program that does great work in upper Northeast Tennessee, they have schools that they have an embedded counselor that's there every day. They also have some schools that they're there 2 days a week or 1 day a week or 3 days a week. So we need to look at the total picture, just saying, you know, this program is here or this program is there. It needs to be looked at in a more deep way than that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne, as you can not be surprised, he was the 2023 National Gear Up Professional of the Year, an award he won last year, and he represents us very well. So thank you, Dwayne. One final presentation by Paige Elliott. She'll be giving an enrollment update, a 14th day enrollment update of what we know so far in this fall semester. She's the Senior Director of Research and Strategy, and she does great work, and I appreciate you being here to give this overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, Chair Scarlett, members of the commission. Like Stephen said, I'm here to share an update on Tennessee's enrollment picture for fall of 2024. I'd like to take a moment to thank our institutional research partners across the state, without whom this update would not be possible, as well as the work of the research and strategy team. As you've probably heard, the release of the 2024-25 free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, was a bit messy, to say the least. So to facilitate student completion of the FAFSA, which is key to unlocking state and federal financial aid, THEC and THEC implemented additional supports this summer, funded by a $1 million grant from the Federal Department of Education, provided through the ECMC Foundation. And as you can see here, those efforts did pay off. You'll see FAFSA submission rates in blue, that's the line at the top, and completion rates in gray on the bottom, going back several years. While submission indicates that the student entered some information on the form, completion is really what we're looking for. That's the goal for that financial aid to be processed. What we see here is that for students in the high school class of 2024 who applied for Tennessee Promise, which does cover about 94% of our high school graduates, so this is pretty representative of that graduating class. What we see is that while FAFSA submission did drop in the most recent class, FAFSA completion remained flat at 73.9% this year. We hypothesize that this gap between submission and completion narrowed because the new FAFSA form is simply harder to submit without it being complete. Going forward, we expect that we will continue to see FAFSA completion rates in the mid-70s and that Tennessee will continue to be a leader in this metric nationwide. And we're grateful for the work of many partners across the state this year that kept this completion rate stable and allowed us to see the enrollment yields that I'm about to share. So in addition to stability in FAFSA filing, we're proud to share today that headcount enrollment as of 14th day is up 2.2% at Tennessee's public colleges and universities. On this slide, you'll see the undergraduate headcount change for each university, as well as for the community college system as a whole, comparing that 14th day enrollment from last year in fall of 2023 to fall of 2024. Overall, the undergraduate headcount across the state increased 2.3% over fall 2023. Universities grew 1.3% and community colleges grew 3.9%. The total undergraduate headcount is nearly 192,000 students across the state. And again, that's just at our public institutions. Notably, the University of Memphis and Tennessee State University saw declines in enrollment, partly explained by declines in freshman enrollment, which I will show you in a moment. Not pictured here, but also important to note, are the 27,000 graduate students enrolled at Tennessee public institutions. Graduate enrollments across the state grew 1.3% this year, driven by a 7.1% increase in graduate student headcounts within the University of Tennessee system. Here you'll see those changes in first-time freshman enrollment, again between fall 2023 and fall 2024. Statewide, first-time freshman enrollment is down 2.5%, driven by the university sector, where first-time freshman enrollment is down 4.5%. At community colleges, though, first-time freshman enrollment increased by 0.4%. For those community colleges, 7 out of 13 of those institutions saw increases in first-time freshman enrollment, including double-digit growth at Jackson State, which, like Stephen mentioned, we'll be visiting later today. In the university sector, several institutions saw increases in first-time freshman enrollment, as you can see here. We did see the freshman class at Tennessee State University decrease to under 900 students, and the University of Memphis saw declines in the size of their freshman class after intentionally shifting their recruitment strategy to increase academic preparedness, as you heard earlier from President Hartgrave. Finally, I want to take a...
Can you go back to one slide, please? Thank you. And looking at this slide here, you have 4 institutions that are in the negative, as Ms. Elliott referenced. Here's some context behind. She argued the University of Memphis, which President Hargrave spoke to. ETSU had a record-breaking enrollment class last year. So for them to be down 0.1% is not alarming. Here, this is the second largest class that they've had. UT Southern has been growing a high amount since they came into the system. And it's a smaller base than other institutions. 7% decline is not unexpected given their growth over that time period. TSU is the one that I know you're all looking at, being down 50% in their freshman class. And we can have a conversation at the end of the slide in this presentation about where TSU is right now. But please know that about 80% of our time is focusing on TSU right now as they navigate their challenges that are happening on their campus. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry, Ms. Elliott, thank you.
I want to take a brief moment to talk about a developing trend at our institutions, and that is accelerated coursework. What you'll see here are enrollment counts by sector over the last 3 years, where end-of-term data is represented by the solid line, and 14th day enrollment data is shown in the dashed line. That 14th day enrollment data is analogous to the counts that I just shared for fall of 2024. The end-of-term enrollment is what you typically see us report in our fact book, and we won't have that data for fall of 2024 until next spring, of course, after the term ends. But what we see here is that some sectors experience bumps in enrollment when comparing the beginning of term to the end of term. Notably, this gap between the solid and the dashed lines is largest in the community college sector. Locally governed institutions also see a gap, though that gap is much smaller, and that is mainly driven by Austin Peay State University, who operates multiple terms within the semester to help facilitate success for their military-affiliated population. We also see that this gap between those lines is widening for community colleges. This correlates to the increased adoption of accelerated coursework, where students may instead take 2 classes in each of 2 7-week terms rather than 4 classes in a traditional 15-week term. Our research counterparts at the Tennessee Board of Regents have recently released some exciting insights into this growing practice, and I would encourage you to check out their work to learn more about how these new models may support student success. And like I said, just wanted to take a moment today to kind of point out that difference and show a little bit of what we expect to see once we get that end of term data in for fall of 24 as well, namely an increase in enrollment at our community colleges. And then finally, to zoom out and consider Tennessee in a national context. The National Student Clearinghouse reports that undergraduate enrollment is up 3% from last fall, according to nearly 52% of institutions that submitted data by the time of their reporting. Nationally, this growth is driven by community colleges, a pattern which also holds in Tennessee. This community college enrollment growth, both nationwide and in Tennessee, is subject to the influence of increasing dual enrollment participation, which we've already talked about today, where high school students enroll in post-secondary education before finishing high school. Tennessee is doing better than the rest of the country in terms of freshman enrollment. While first-time student enrollments declined nationwide by 5%, and declined across all sectors. Tennessee's community college saw an increase in first-time students, which is really exciting news given that this is a group whose enrollments were particularly hard hit by the pandemic, and then again recently by FAFSA challenges. In summary, fall 2024 saw growth in undergraduate headcounts at Tennessee's community colleges and universities, an exciting development, again, following that summer of challenges with the FAFSA. As we look forward next spring and summer, we will report in more detail on these fall 2024 enrollments and on the college-going behavior for the class of 2024. The QR code on your screen will take you to the landing page for all of THEC's reporting, as well as our contact information and a link to sign up for our reports. So with that, thank you for this chance to share this promising update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Great update. And I don't necessarily think I have a question, but I feel an obligation to follow up on a little of what Stephen talked about with the enrollment numbers. It's great that we have this data. But going back to TSU in particular, I feel like I would not be fulfilling my obligation to you, my fellow commissioners on this board, or to any of you in my role as comptroller, if I didn't make sure you were aware of how dire the situation is at Tennessee State University. Tennessee State University has faced a situation where they are so short on money, they were going to not be able to make payroll this month. November 2024. The state has recently had to infuse a lot of money into TSU just to keep the lights on. The previous administration at Tennessee State University and the previous Board of Trustees at Tennessee State University were so derelict in their duty, particularly in managing enrollment and scholarships, that they have literally put this storied university on the verge of collapse. I can tell you encouragingly that the new Board of Trustees and that the interim administration that's been hired is working very hard to correct things, and part of the key to that is going to be right-sizing the student population, figuring out exactly how many students they need in order to make a profit and start rebuilding a reserve. There is no reserve today. Rebuild a reserve, and then deciding to focus on serving that size student population and serving those students on the primary campus in Nashville. There are other steps that Tennessee State University must take in the very short term. Things like, it strikes me that over these past few months in particular, Tennessee State has been offered help, but the previous administration in particular rejected that very common sense help. They need some help running the back of the house functions, the accounting and human resources functions. They have excess property, very valuable property in the downtown area of Nashville that they need to figure out how to sell or lease so as to be able to turn a profit with that rather than to see it continue to decay. But I want you to know how dire this situation is. However bad you thought it was, I promise you it's worse. There has not been, since the new administration has been in office, an airing of this, but I would encourage you, my fellow THEC commissioners, at a minimum, to tune in to the State Building Commission meeting on November 14th, because Lieutenant Governor McNally at the September Building Commission meeting asked Interim President Dr. Ron Johnson to be there with his team to detail publicly the financial state of Tennessee State University. And that will be a key meeting. And so I commend this new board for rising to the challenge of being willing to serve and take on what is a monumental task. I appreciate Dr. Johnson and his team for being willing to serve in the roles they are serving. I promise you, everybody involved is working to return Tennessee State University to the great storied institution that it has been and can be as much as we can, but the outcome is not guaranteed. It is going to take a continued focus and a lot of fast work. And enrollment, I actually had this in my notes to mention it sometime. I don't know where it's best. I had it kind of down in the other business section, but this enrollment picture is so key to Tennessee State's future. And I think one reason they had such a stark drop-off is because students were looking at the possibility of a future at Tennessee State and seeing that it wasn't there. And we have to fix that. We have to help them fix that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comptroller. We needed that further information. Dr. Gento, anything else?
I just want to supplement that and give some thanks if I can. Chancellor Tidings, a couple of months ago, I had a call with her on a Saturday after talking to the interim president at TSU, President Johnson. They needed some financial help in the background, not just money, but actual someone on the ground to help them sift through all their finance data. And I called her, and she had Vice Chancellor Alicia Fox over finance over to TSU that week. And Alicia and Valerie on her team have been working very closely with TSU since then. On our team, and THEC specifically, we now have 3 full-time employees on campus at TSU every day in the financial aid office to help their internal operations and help them get the financial aid that they need. And we've got 2 part-time as well. And we're working on that front of house operation to potentially get a service there to better align all their functions from registrar, admission, and financial aid, and more. It's going to take a lot of work to support TSU and to help TSU, but I just wanted to publicly thank TBR and our TSEC colleagues as well.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott, for your presentation. And maybe to reverse the thinking here, Dr. Gentile talked a little bit about the underperformance of a couple of schools, as did Comptroller Mumpower. But at the top of a couple of your charts, I saw UT Chattanooga outperforming a couple of different times. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what you saw either from UT Martin or UT Chattanooga that was unique, that may be modeled or things that we need to pay attention to as to why there's better success there?
Yeah, great question. I think those institutions do offer insights and opportunities for us to speak to those campuses and better understand what they're doing. I know especially at Martin, the undergraduate headcount change here is relatively successful. And so, yeah, definitely a question we want to ask and dig into more. And something we'll be able to do as well when we get more data at the end of the term is to better understand if there are particular demographics that they're seeing success in, if there are particular student populations, for example, that they've been able to recruit or to bring in. And like I said, that will come at the end of term when we get better data.
If I can supplement that, I know President Boyd is here as well, if you can speak to it. But I went to a UT Martin advisory board meeting about a month ago. It was a great meeting just to be there in that room with them and hear from their enrollment manager, who I believe Commissioner Bob Smith, you had hired when you were chancellor there way back when. Maybe I'm off on that, but I know that you helped bring her in. And they have developed much more expansive strategies in their enrollment management arm to be able to meet that region in a better way. Looking at Austin P, they were the highest growth in freshmen this year. And I remember talking to President Licari a couple of weeks ago about that, and maybe we can have a conversation after the commission meeting about that, about their strategies. They're just getting out there more and deploying better data and strategies to be able to tell students earlier and sooner that you are admitted to the institution.
Thank you very much. there any other questions? Any other questions for Dr. Gentile? Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda. This is our first action item is the consent agenda. We only have one item on that agenda. If there are no questions or objections, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve it.
Second.
Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Motion carries. The first item on our agenda is the fiscal year 2025-26 operating state appropriation recommendations. Treasurer Lillard, would you provide an overview of the agenda item and the committee's recommendations, please?
Yes, on your agenda here today is the operating state appropriation recommendations to the board. The committee, Finance and Operations Committee, met yesterday and received a presentation from Russell Van Zimmerman on that item and answered questions about it and had a good discussion on this item and ultimately recommended it for adoption by the board.
Anyone have any questions for the committee yesterday? Okay, well, if there's no questions, then we will entertain a motion and a second on this agenda item.
I'll move approval of the item.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Brackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Abstain.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our next item on the regular calendar is the fiscal year 2025-26 guiding tuition and fees ranges. Treasurer Lillard, will you please provide an overview?
All right, the committee, Finance and Operations Committee, met yesterday on this item as well and heard a presentation of Russell Van Zimmerman, the Senior Director of Fiscal Policy, and also had remarks by Dr. Clary Stinson, Vice President for Planning and Finance at Tennessee Tech University. There was a discussion about those items and questions asked and other points explored, and after consideration, the committee recommended approval of this item, and I so move its approval.
Is there a second on that? Any questions or discussion? Yes, Comptroller?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Treasurer, for your work in the committee. Can you talk more about the committee discussion, or Stephen, can you talk more about the formula you used to develop this range, and in particular, just coming off having discussed the situation at TSU? We recognize that we have very different circumstances, very different geographic locations of our institutions, which all have very qualified boards of trustees who have a duty as appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature to set tuition for their individual campuses. Can you talk about the formula that helped arrive at this guiding range? And it is a guiding range right now. We set the range later or next year. Thank you.
Well, as you know, the tuition model that the staff uses has been developed over a period of time to take into account as many of the factors as possible for the different attributes of different institutions. And in fact, one of the things that we talked about a good bit yesterday was prompted in part by the remarks of Dr. Clary Stinson from Tennessee Tech University. Was on behalf of institutions, she was asking for more flexibility in regard to the formula as it's finally adopted, in the spring and everything. And, our response to that, the committee's response, and we have other commissioners who are here that participated in that meeting, but was that, number one, this is a guiding thing at this particular point, not the final thing. And number two, it is also a matter of if we're going to go to a radical change of the tuition model, we need to take a reasoned long-term look at that over the next some months here, leading into the next year's cycle of that, rather than trying to do it on the fly at one committee meeting, basically. And that was the way that discussion ended up. I'll let the staff comment, Dr. Gentile or others on the staff about the particulars of the model, but that's what we looked at.
Mr. Comptroller, the model itself looks at enrollment growths, inflation, CPI, specifically core CPI, tuition revenue that you received this year, and state appropriation expectations for next year to guide that conversation. Importantly, when we were looking at the data, me and Amanda Clefane and Russell Van Zommer and the fiscal policy team, I did have an eye on where TSU was showing up in that model, and knowing that that 4% range was covering what we know right now on what it was projecting. However, we don't really know right now what their true needs are. And talking with TBR and TSU, we likely won't know until late December or early January about the true tuition needs at that time. And of course, we will take that into consideration as we develop a recommendation. But also to Mr. Treasurer's point and commentary, and looking at next year and having one-on-one conversations with each of you on the philosophy of why we do a binding range to help guide why we do it. Commissioner Rader made a good point when, as a former student at one of our institutions experiencing 10 to 15% growth in tuition each year. That's what got to THEC having a binding range, was the state wanting to have better control over those huge increases. Did we overcorrect? Did we go too small in our range? 2 years ago, the conversation was different. Anything above a 2% range seemed an excess. So we will, over those coming months, have those conversations to help identify the position of the commission right now and other stakeholders to help identify a better process, a comprehensive process to reflect these needs.
Comptroller Mumpower, just to reiterate what has already been said, we did talk about the narrowness of the range, but also the dutiful responsibility that the boards have to really oversee their institutions and do what's right in terms of identifying appropriate sizes of increases, given the circumstances within their own local communities and institutions. So staff did commit to going back and reevaluating how they get to that range and how to make sure that that range is providing sufficient latitude for institutions to make judgments based on what their circumstances are.
Let me say thank you very much. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to be at the committee, which I'm a member of yesterday, and I'd heard some about it, so I appreciate the articulation of what happened there. And I will say that I agree wholeheartedly. I think in the recommended range, it needs to be narrow because institutions, which are here, and I think we expect you to run tight ships. I do expect you to run tight ships. I expect you to jettison programs that don't have students, et cetera, and so on, and control costs at every level. And so I think this is a great way to start. Of course, I think the rubber really meets the road when we set the binding range in the spring. This is a good start. I think it just strikes me that we are fortunate to have a great staff at THEC, and we depend on them to do a good job, and they do a good job. But the accountability for this range, the accountability for every item that's an action item rests on us as commissioners. And so that it's good to have a robust discussion about it. It's good for us as commissioners to understand more about what factors go into the equations of developing this range. And so I appreciate the discussion that happened at the committee yesterday, and I appreciate y'all talking about it today. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Please.
For the conversation too much, but in the information that Dr. Hargrave and the University of Memphis gave out earlier today, something I was pleased to see is not just a focus on enrollment and retention and progression and ultimately graduation, but really operational efficiency as part of that strategic goal too. And I think that's something that gets lost a lot of times, and that we could stand to hear back from all of our institutions more about exactly how they're running it and how they're staying. I hate to use the phrase lean and mean, but how they are running a tight ship. So I'll just add that.
Please.
If I could comment just a minute further, I think the comptrollers made those points in previous occasions about who ultimately runs the institutions and is responsible for the tuition range that they actually enact in terms of their published rates. And, I think that obviously we complimented yesterday in the committee the efforts of all of our institutions throughout the state to run their institutions as efficiently as possible, and discuss that item some, along the way. But I think that while they are responsible for setting the rates that they publish in the end at their institutions, the legislature has expressed, from my standpoint, the fact that they want us to be the overseers of the amount of the upper range that's being used ultimately, i.e. trying to contain cost to the extent it's possible to do it in that manner. Recognizing, again, that we don't run the institutions. That's up to the Board of Trustees of the LGIs or other institutions that are involved for the most part. So, there's a difficulty there, and I think that if we're going to change it, in some way, in a significant way, we need to be consulting with the General Assembly about that, and getting a further read on what their feel about it is, and the governor and everyone else, to make sure there is a consensus among everyone involved, including the institutions themselves, about where we're going to head in this regard. So just make those remarks.
Thank you so much, Treasurer. And Secretary, I will tell you, this is, when we first received the master plans, I assumed that we'd be looking at the strategic plans as well, which is not the case. I think this is the first time I've seen a strategic plan from a university, and I, too, am impressed with looking at that, and it provides more context. Any other questions or comments? Okay, wonderful. I will entertain a motion and a second to move forward with the guiding tuition range.
Chairwoman, there is a motion and a second on the table.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent. Well then, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower? Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion carries. Next up, we have the capital projects recommendation. This is the 25-26 recommendation. Treasurer Lillard, will you please provide us an overview?
Okay, as you can tell, the Finance and Operations Committee met for a lengthy period of time yesterday on all of these items, and we had a lengthy discussion about the capital projects recommendations that are now before you, and had a presentation by staff. Paul Marshall, the Senior Director of Facilities Planning and Preparedness, went through an extensive PowerPoint presentation on this. We discussed the review that was performed by staff in arriving at this. This is, of course, one of the items of highest interest that the Commission does. Commissioner Stafford and I and the other commissioners participating in the committee meeting had a robust discussion about various points of it. For instance, one of them was the research component of this. And Dr. Hargrave mentioned it during his remarks, where we have a research component that's ranked rather far down the item list here in this particular recommendation. There was discussion about whether in the future the staff will look at, and they will look at, about possibly pulling the research component out and having a separate rubric for that. as opposed to having it competing with bricks and mortar projects that don't have the same return formula, if you will, on dollars invested. So there was a good deal of discussion about all of these items, and I thank the commissioners that participated in that. And with that, Madam Chair, I move approval of the capital projects recommendations.
Do I have a second? Second. What sort of questions or discussion do we have on this? Please.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for the work that has gone into this. I know it's extensive. Coming off the presentation we saw about the enrollment numbers, which could be equated to the demand for services provided by these individual universities, what, and I don't know who the question is to, Stephen, you or somebody you designate, what component of evidence-based demand goes into arriving at what facilities are needed? And then I'll have a follow-up, but I'll start there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Our process, which has been reviewed and renewed for this year, however, has always had as part of its component not necessarily a look at the overall enrollment of the institution that's bringing forward its facility, but specifically, if it's an academic program, what is your enrollment and degree output going to be after a number of years if this facility comes on board? So in that sense, we ask each institution to provide by SIP code classification program of every major that they might be serving or graduate program, what that intended enrollment increase will look like over time. And that factors into the question that we score on, which is relate this project to the state goals of attainment, growth and attainment, and how this plays into it.
So if I'm understanding that to some degree, what you're saying is what you ask to be forecasted is not necessarily based on the demand that's there today, but kind of if we build this, we anticipate a certain number will come and be successful in that program. Is that a fair description of it?
Yes, sir. It's similar to our academic program review. We ask them, if you create this program, what is that demand that will come into that program? Yes, sir.
Thank you. A question I have as well, and I am a huge supporter of our TCATs. I note that, we had such a large infusion of money, more than $1 billion, and I got an email last week inviting me to 10 or more groundbreakings for TCATs that haven't even occurred yet. And of course, I know particular item 7 here, the Lincoln County TCAT, very important to me personally. Yet at the same point in time, I think statewide about 11,000 students are served at TCATs when some of our universities are turning away more than 11,000 kids a year because they don't have capacity to serve. What is the thinking there that goes into arriving at a list like this?
There's nuance to it, and it depends on what that program is serving. An example of it is the aviation campus replacements, the TBR TCAT statewide, focusing on aviation needs. Quite frankly, the need there and at TCAT Memphis is that the airport is about to and planning to put a runway, I believe, through the current TCAT there, and that's a need that has arisen more so just recently. And so that, I'm going to ask Chancellor Tidings, could you please address a little more supplementary information about how TCAT projects might show up as need, even though that investment was given 2 years ago?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the question. When we put that number in, that's the number that we're serving in an 18-month period. So we're rolling that number over a lot quicker than what the universities do because they're typically 4 to 5 years with their head count. The project that Stephen referred to is an aviation project at both of those locations. The one in Memphis is critical and dire in that we've had discussions with the airport and they need the location where we currently sit. They're taking that back. They are going to provide some money for the building of the project because they realize that they're putting us in a bind. But next year, we actually have to evacuate the building because the airport is growing. So we have got to find another location to put them for the aviation program. And that is a strong provider of the workforce for FedEx in Memphis. We do the majority of their training.
Thank you
Madam
very
Chair,
much.
Could I comment on that just a minute too, to supplement what Dr. Tidings said? And that is the money that was appropriated by the General Assembly, for the most part, not absolutely every dollar, but for the most part, was intended to deal with the situation where TCATs over the years, some of the facilities they were in were built as early as the 1960s, the early 60s and all. And I've been out and toured many of these facilities, and they just absolutely need to be replaced. So that money is a sort of a separate thing to catch up, if you will, some of those extreme replacement needs that have occurred and everything. Dr. Tidings is talking about, as she said, a project that's more current in nature in terms of the current need that's there for it. So that's the distinction, I think, between those two pools of money.
Thank you very much. Again, Dr. Tidings, thank you to you, Stephen, Treasurer. You know, again, and I'll go back to Treasurer, something you mentioned, our research institutions, which have to remain on the cutting edge. Again, commissioners, we have a great staff that prepares this list, but this is our product. And I am going to be responsible to the General Assembly when they ask me about it, and you will too. And so I think it's important that we have these kinds of discussions, not only in the committee, but at the commission meeting, to understand, and I've learned things today. And so it's important to remember that this list is a product of us as commissioners, and we are accountable and responsible for it. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? So I do have a question. So for enrollment and other operating costs, we have a funding formula. Why do we not have a funding formula for capital costs?
A funding formula for the capital process, as in distributing capital dollars based on certain input conditions. Yeah. You know, this is something that actually came up about 7 years ago. I lovingly call it the Oldham idea, which was to potentially distribute capital appropriations to institutions based on name your input. Is it square footage? Is it enrollment? Is it outcomes? And back at that time, we thought it was too radical of an idea to move forward, because oftentimes pools of funding that accumulate over time can easily be taken away for another project the General Assembly might have. However, President Boyd approached me some months ago about this as well, and my team has put together an idea on paper right now what this could look like, which I intend to circulate, and talking with the presidents first for pushback on that. I think it could be a really great idea on paper, and I think it'd be a really great idea in action. It just comes down to whether the General Assembly and the governor would be for funding an approach like that. Because the funding would have to accumulate over time before an institution could say, I have enough money now to put this towards a facility.
I'd be very curious to know if our building commission members have any comments about that idea. Or not. Please. Would you like to, yeah, please come up. You're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to add to what Stephen just said, since he did reference me, but the LGIs, the TBR, and the University of Tennessee all endorsed we'll call it the Oldham idea of being able to distribute funding for capital, similar to what we do with the performance funding for operating. As you notice, we never really have any debates about operating funds. Everybody's agreed to the formula, and it works. But with capital, we're always having these debates about which building, advocating for one building or the other. And we think this would be a much better way of possibly distributing our funds. And then I'll say, even though I didn't know that we were referring to it as a very radical idea, but just for reference, over the last 6 months, I've had regular meetings with presidents of systems in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina. All of them do it this way. There's an allocation, a calculation of how much funding they should give to the system or systems, and then internally they make that decision. Because at the end of the day, it's really hard for this for the staff at THEC, for this commission, for the legislature to actually figure out what's more valuable on any given day. A gross anatomy lab in the Health Science Center or a new aviation building. But the boards at each of our institutions do have a much closer view and can make those decisions. And so, again, maybe radical from what we've done in the past, but it's a fairly common thing across the country.
Thank you, President Boyd. That's what I meant, radical for how we've been doing things.
Thank you, President Boyd. And thank you, Dr. Gentile, for that input. So we have a second. So we're looking to take a vote. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale? Aye. Commissioner Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes and 1 abstention.
Motion carries. So next, we have the East Tennessee State University Master Plan. Treasurer Lillard, once again, committee was very active yesterday. If you wouldn't mind giving us an update.
Again, another of the items that the Capital and Operations Committee met, or Finance and Operations Committee met on yesterday was the East Tennessee State University Master Plan. We heard a presentation from Jeremy Ross, the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President for Administration at ETSU, and also by Lauren Leidy, who's the Senior Principal for Campus Planning and Studio Leader at Smith Group. They gave a presentation on this seemed to us a very well thought out plan after considering it and looking at it with them and discussing their goals as a university. So I move approval of the master plan as recommended by the committee.
Second.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mr. Jeremy Ross is wonderful. If you wouldn't mind providing us a bit of an overview and answer any questions, please. Thank you.
I turned it off. I struggled with the button, sorry. I did, before we started, want to say I appreciate the chair's opening remarks in East Tennessee. The flooding and the response to that and the rebuilding, it's been overwhelming for a lot of people. And that being said, this is a very positive plan that we're putting forward that deals with our future. And I'd like to move through some slides very quickly in a brief overview. We involve thousands of people, some on mobile applications, surveys, town halls, these types of events. These are the key takeaways from a process that lasted about 18 months or more. So I'll only highlight just a few of them. One of them is housing. We're at 100% occupancy at East Tennessee State University, and that one was one of the easiest ones to identify a need. So the master plan comes up with short-term ways to address this and long-term ways to add capacity. Another is building and facility renovations and optimizing our resources. We've been looking for ways to modernize what we have in lieu of just new buildings, new classrooms, new labs. And that's a significant approach that we're taking. The other is transportation in general. And that's pedestrian ways, that's greenways, obviously cars, things of that sort was a big theme. It's part of everyone's experience on a campus, and those three things stood out. So these are the short-term projects between 0 to 10 years. I'll highlight just a few of them. The yellow circles are the housing, that's renovations and new housing to add capacity. You'll see at the bottom a green circle where it says 2. That's part of that transportation. That's a new common way in the middle of campus, a greenway called the University Common that spans the campus, and there are several of those. The only other circles I'd like to point out on this one is number 6 and number 4. Those are 2 projects that are underway now. One is Brown Hall. It's the largest building on campus for classrooms. It's a renovation. that we're working on phase one, and the other is a new academic building. Both of these projects, as we've said before, they add no new square footage. They're either renovation or coming back, again, very efficient ways to modernize what we have. I will point out one more, actually, is number 12. That will be an area where we have to have different type of space. That's engineering. So we just added mechatronics, we have general engineering, interior architecture, things of this sort. Those programs are seeing significant growth. In the long-term plan, when you look at this, I will point out the green circles with the number 25. You see 4 of those. Those are potential areas for new parking garages that we'll be planning for in our long-term plan. As surface parking comes offline, new structures are added. If you look on the left side, you see a number 24. That is along a major thoroughfare in Johnson City, and that is an area for a new health sciences technology corridor. So at the very corner is a new integrated health sciences building, which is in the design phase now. And with new growth of programs, we just added prosthetics, orthotics recently, one of the largest nursing programs in the state, physical therapy, occupational therapy, College of Medicine is growing. These programs are experiencing growth as well as new ones in the future, and that is a great location to serve the community, but also the campus as we move forward. Here's a list of all of these projects there as well as part of the process. Yesterday, Commissioner Lillard, also Stafford asked some nice questions. Other things that were included in the plan dealt with security, well-being, those types of things, and also flexibility of space to project our future, things we can foresee, and things that we may not foresee. That's the end of my presentation. For any questions or discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Are there any questions for Mr. Ross? Commissioner.
Jeremy, thank you. I've actually had an opportunity to visit the campus and to weigh in on what Treasurer Lillard said. I think this is a very well thought out plan. When you can actually see how it's going to work, it's very impressive, it's very cohesive, and works well for not only the university, but the surrounding Johnson City area. So, job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brackett.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak a little bit on this plan. I think you can tell a lot of love and hard work has went into it. And as a student, there's a lot of points I like, especially, you know, the Brown Hall renovation that'll help a lot of STEM students in their postgraduate programs and schooling. And I've seen firsthand from living on campus, you know, housing slowly reach its maximum capacity as enrollment has went up at ETSU. So I think a lot of these are reasonable steps forward for student success and quality of life improvements.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would take a motion for approval. Moved in second. Roll call.
Chairwoman Scarlett? Aye. Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale? Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower? Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes.
Wonderful, motion carries. And next, we have the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture Master Plan. Treasurer Lillard.
Okay. Once again, the Finance and Operations Committee considered this item at length, and we had a presentation by Dr. Keith Carver, Senior Vice President and Senior Vice Chancellor of UT at the Institute of Agriculture, and also a presentation by Jessica Leonard, who's a principal at Ayers St. Gross. They went through a lengthy presentation, and we discussed the mission of the Institute of Agriculture versus the facilities that they were pointing out and other items they had in their plan. And after consideration and a good bit of discussion about it, the committee made a motion to, and approved a motion to recommend it to the board, and I move its approval here.
Excellent, thank you so much. I would like to welcome Dr. Keith Carver, Senior Vice President and Senior Vice Chancellor of UT Institute of Agriculture, is here to provide us a brief overview.
Thank you, commissioners and leadership team from THEC. Certainly a pleasure to be here to talk about something that's been 12 months in the making. Back in 2023, you all were kind enough to approve the master plan for the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And that master plan actually included the Institute of Agriculture's footprint in Knoxville. This, however, expands that. It's additive, adds to the UTK master plan, but really covers all those areas that are across the state. And as most of you know, we're a statewide institute with a presence in all 95 counties. And this one takes into account everything in West and Middle as well as East Tennessee. There's 4 4-H centers that are covered here. There's also 3 regional extension offices that are in this plan, but 18 properties which are ag research facilities and teaching farms across the state. Also includes facilities that we have for veterinary medicine that extend out beyond Knoxville, as well as the UT Gardens. Just to give you a sense of size, the Institute, as we mentioned, is in all 95 counties across all great grand divisions, but it's over 21,000 acres. Primarily, those acres are research facilities, research farms. What this does not include in that 21,000 acres is there's another 19,000 acres down in Fayette County with the Ames Research Center. And I know some of you have been out to Ames. That's owned by the Ames Foundation and supported. We live there and teach there, but is owned by the foundation, so it's not included in this. What I'd also like to point out is that all these dots across this map represent where students and faculty and staff are working daily. I'd also like to point out that our colleagues at the other great land grant here in Tennessee at Tennessee State University, they are also utilizing these facilities that we have all across, particularly in extension and 4-H and our research farms. So wanted to point out that they join us and we have joint projects going on all across the state. When you talk about what defines our master plan, obviously we went with our strategic goals of the Institute, but really it's mission specific. And so what we want to do at the Institute every day is solve and address the food and fiber issues for all of Tennessee. And we want to make improvements for Tennesseans, one family, one community, one farm at a time. And we think that's a great mission to have, and we're proud to do that and love working with our folks in all 95 counties. When you think about what's driving this, really our plan is really focused on a couple things, but mainly ag research. We've really upped the grant funding that we've had at the Institute, particularly over the last 3 years. And I want to point out that research that we do in agricultural research, it's certainly great. It's about patents, but really ag research is going back to families and communities. And so we're looking to create ways to make farming more profitable, to create access to safer food, more affordable food. And so it's really practical applied research, and we think that's important. Also, growth in 4-H. Tennessee's got the largest 4-H program in the country. We're awfully proud of that. We appreciate your support for that. But the activities going on with STEM research and STEM experiences and outdoor experiences at those camps. But also just visitors that we have, long-term, that come there for short-term research experiences, but also the longer-term, hosting students at a site for 3 and 4 weeks so they can do projects with faculty. And when you look at specifically, as you dig down into the plan, there's a lot of just maintenance in there, primarily maintenance. We've got some renovation and updating that we need to do. We're doing some pretty sophisticated research in some pretty old buildings and facilities, and so really upgrading those and remodeling. Very few of our centers across the state need to just be torn down, and that's good news. We can work with what's there, and also very few that need to be totally replaced either, so excited about that. We divided up our really near-term projects looking over the next 5 years. You see we've got our priorities in East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee and in West Tennessee. Some of those we're going to be asking the state for help. Others we're going to put into a large capital campaign the university is doing feasibility study and work on right now. And we've got some real exciting projects that we think industry and some of our donors are going to be extremely excited about. With that, I would ask if you had any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Carver or Treasurer Lillard? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Brackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Carver. Our next item is the post-secondary authorization rule revision. Dr. Stephanie Bellard Chase, Senior Director of Post-Secondary State Authorization, will provide an overview of this agenda item and then answer any questions. Dr. Bellard Chase.
Thank you, Chairwoman Scarlett, Dr. Gentile, members of the commission, good morning. Before I get to that, in your agenda items, we are requesting a rule revision to increase the fees for what we do for the state of Tennessee. So in addition to reviewing and evaluating new institutions that come in and the programs, we also handle student complaints. So when students that go to the authorized institutions have an issue and it cannot be resolved at the institutional level, they come to THEC so that we can look into the complaint for them. We collect statistical data from the institutions so we know how many Tennessee students they are serving and their completion, withdrawal, and placement rates. If an institution wants to change their name or change location, we also handle that. Additionally, we do have institutions that close, and if an institution closes before they give the student what they paid for, we call that unearned tuition. So if you're in a 20-week program and at week 10 the institution closes, the function of the tuition guarantee fund is to pay you back the tuition that you may have lost. So there is a board, and on the board are the comptroller, the commissioner of finance and administration, the executive director of THEC, and a representative from the post-secondary educational industry. And Treasurer Lillard serves as the chairman of that board. So in our role, when a school closes, we reach out to the students, we put information on our website, and we get their transcripts. And when the transcripts come in, that's a big thing that we do. We serve as a repository for transcripts of closed institutions. So like many of you, if you went to UT, you can call UT, pay a fee, and they send you your transcript. We do the same thing for these students for institutions that have closed. Also, each institution pays a small fee into the tuition guarantee fund for 6 years. And we work with the treasurer's office, send those notices out, and that account is held at the treasurer's office. And this is just an overview of the institutions that are authorized by THEC as of July 1, 2024. There was 266 institutions. 109 of them have regular authorization, and 67 have optional expedited. To get OEA authorization, you have to be accredited. And so as you see, we have for-profit and not-for-profit institutions, and they enrolled approximately 61,000 Tennessee students in fiscal year 23. I would be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Bellard Chase? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Nay.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 12 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Next, on the agenda item, we have a new academic program from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. It's the Occupational Therapy Doctorate. Our new chair of the Access Academics and Student Success Committee, Commissioner Allman, will provide us an update on that agenda item.
Thank you. The Access Academics and Student Success Committee, I'm going to say AASSC, shorten that, heard a presentation for the new academic program, University of Tennessee Health Science Center Occupational Therapy Doctorate, from Dr. Cynthia Russell, Vice Chancellor for Academic, Faculty, and Student Affairs at UTHSC. The committee was impressed with the program as presented and the need in the labor market for occupational therapists. After a discussion with Dr. Russell, the committee voted to recommend that the commission approve this academic program. At this time, I'd like to make a motion.
Any questions or comments about this program? With that, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Excellent, motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is the University of Tennessee Knoxville Agricultural Leadership Education and Communication, also known as ALEC program. Commissioner Allman?
The AASSC heard a presentation for the new academic program from the University of Tennessee Knoxville for ALEC from Dr. John Zomchik, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor at UTK. Dr. Zomchik provided insight into the unique niche this program would both fill in both industry and academics. After a discussion with Dr. Zomchik, the committee voted to recommend that the commission approve this academic program. Make that motion for approval.
Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower? Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Wonderful. Motion carries. The next on our agenda item, we have the HBCU Success Advisory Board Appointments and Bylaws Update. Commissioner Allman, would you give us an update from the committee, please?
As Comptroller Mumpower mentioned earlier, TSU's situation is unfortunate and deeply concerning. Yesterday, we heard from Dr. Mosby, and there are a lot of positive initiatives in place amongst HBCUs across our state. I appreciate her report, her presentation on all efforts. And with that said, the AASSC heard that presentation from, for the HBCU Success Advisory Board Appointments and Bylaws Update by Dr. Brittany Mosby, Director of HBCU Success. The board will now consist of the presidents of the HBCUs in Tennessee and 4 lay members, for a total of 11 members. Additionally, the bylaws are being updated to reflect the new composition of the board and other minor changes. After a discussion with Dr. Mosby, the committee voted to recommend that the commission approve the board appointments and bylaws update. At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments about this agenda item? Okay, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood? Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard? Comptroller Mumpower? Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Excellent, motion carries. Our next agenda item on the regular calendar is the policy revision to our rules of procedures. Scott Sloan, General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer, will provide us an overview of the changes to the rules and then answer any questions. Mr. Sloan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the item before you right now reflects conversations that the board has had the last 2 meetings. We've also distributed this language to you to comply with a 10-day notice requirement that would allow for immediate implementation. You'll notice next on the agenda is the election of officers, so upon approval of this, that mechanism is in place for you to use today. Just a few items that are included in this policy revision. First of all, as discussed, this is introducing a 2-year term for the officers, whereas we've had annual elections for as long as anyone can remember. There is a term limit in place for the chair of 2 years. However, the chair could, after a term off, could be the chair again. This removes the grand division requirements per Comptroller Mumpower's request for the officers. And the chair would be elected from the vice chair positions going forward. We have also incorporated, per the board's request, rotations between the legislatively appointed chair and those that are appointed by the governor. Finally, it removes the summer term that simply required us to do those officer elections during the summer term at the summer meeting. This would simply mean if we elect officers today, 2 years from now, we would have those elections again at the appropriate time. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Sloan?
Move the item.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Wonderful, thank you. Motion carries. The next, and I believe last item, almost last item we have, is the election of the commission officers. This will be for the opportunity to elect officers under the new rules, which Mr. Sloan just walked us through, which will provide us for a 2-year term. The office consists of a chair, 2 vice chairs, and a secretary. In order to accommodate the new requirements that the chairs be selected from the vice chairs and the chair must alternate between gubernatorial and legislative appointees, we may wish to select vice chairs who are from the opposite appointment group as the chair we select. I will now pass the gavel to Comptroller Mumpower, who will conduct this portion of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for the adoption of the new rules. It is now up to us to elect a chair and 2 vice chairs. I have a motion that I will make. Tara Scarlett has done an outstanding job as chair, and while she has been chair, under this new set of rules, I believe the spirit in which we pass them would allow her, under the new rules, to start today serving a 2-year term. I would like to nominate her as chair, along with, as a gubernatorial appointment, Secretary Hargett, who has served on this commission for 16 years, assiduously, and has an interest in the work that we do as vice chair, as a legislative appointment, and extrapolating it again, alternating back to a gubernatorial appointment. Commissioner Ragsdale was elected vice chair last meeting and served a very brief time, and we'd hate to throw you overboard this quick. So I will nominate him as other vice chair. So that's as chairman for a 2-year term, Chairman Scarlett, Vice Chairman Hargett for a 2-year term, and then Vice Chairman Ragsdale for a 2-year term. That would be a nomination that I would put out there, a motion I would make.
Comptroller Mumpower, will you also make a motion for secretary?
Sure. Yes, I will be glad to make a motion for secretary just as soon as I see somebody express interest in that. So let me think about this. Gubernatorial, legislative, gubernatorial, and Commissioner Allman, would you be willing to serve as secretary? As a legislative appointment, is that correct? And I'll make a motion that Commissioner Allman serve as secretary.
Second.
So I made a motion, I hear a second. What about discussion? Secretary Hargett was not recognized. Let's go ahead and take the vote.
Chairwoman Scarlett? Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett? Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale? Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Chairman, you have 13 ayes.
Thank you all for your willingness to serve. I'll pass this back to officially the chairman for this new term, Chairman Scarlett.
Thank you, Comptroller. You can keep your mic.
You've already taken the gavel.
Our last action item will be the appointment of Commissioner Brackett to a committee, and I'd like to nominate Ms. Brackett to serve on our Finance and Operations Committee. Do I have a second? Any further discussion? Okay, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett?
Aye.
Commissioner Allman?
Aye.
Commissioner Brackett?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock?
Aye.
Commissioner Perry?
Aye.
Commissioner Rader?
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale? Aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford?
Aye.
Commissioner Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Hargett? Treasurer Lillard?
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower?
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 13 ayes.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Commissioner Brackett. Next up, we have our agenda item is the Tiger Life and Step Up presentation. Patrick Krolik, Project First Grant Program Manager, will present information regarding Tiger Life. You are recognized, Mr. Krolik.
Thank you very much. THEC Chair, THEC Commissioners, thank you very much for having us today, University Presidents, distinguished guests. The Institute on Disability is honored today to present on inclusive higher education is what we're going to talk about in higher ed. Unfortunately, the director, professor of the Institute could not be here today to do this presentation, so she asked me to step in and do it. My name is Mr. Patrick Krolik. I'm a grant manager for an RSA grant with the Department of Education at the Institute on Disability. She asked me to speak because I've been with the Institute since 2017. I've worked in all different areas of the Institute, so my expertise and kind of knowledge versus others may be just more beneficial to this conversation. Really quickly, just to talk about the Institute, to give you a context, the Inclusive Higher Education Program, Tiger Life, is within the Institute of Disability, which is housed at the Department of Counseling, Education, Research, and Psych in the College of Education. So what we do is we are a diverse group of researchers, instructors, and practitioners working with students with intellectual and development disabilities, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, so we have a concept or a context of that as well. There's three pillars of the Institute, and that's where I'd like to kind of start our conversation before we get into the IHEs. There's the research, there's the teaching piece, and then there's a service piece. So if we look on the screen, obviously research, Project First, that's where I'm located. We have a Tennessee Believes grant. Career, job placement, and stabilization is another pillar. And then that middle pillar is the College Campus Transition Program, IHE, Tiger Life. We also have an agreement with, an MOU with Memphis Shelby County Schools, where we have a college campus transition program. This is kind of like the dual enrollment programs that we've kind of talked about today. The students are Memphis Shelby County School students, but they come to the university campus and get a college experience as they prepare to transition to adulthood. And that could be going to a post-secondary program, an IHE, Tiger Life, or going right to the world of work. So let's kind of talk about IHEs. This is a movement, and what we're seeing, and if you look at the graph on the right before we go through the laundry list on the left, higher education programs since 2004 have really grown. And this graph, unfortunately, is not up to date. It stops at 2020. But there's over 370 programs at roughly 4,000 universities in the nation. So this is a relatively new program. And so it's growing in popularity because of workforce readiness. And now we can kind of move over to the left side and look at the laundry list of items. This is a typical inclusive higher education program, criteria for entry, and what the student kind of profile looks like. They're typically non-degree seeking. The Tiger Life program is considered continuing education. Programs 2 to 4 years. The students do get a certificate in community service, typically, from the Tiger Life program. That's what they receive. The population is, as their I can't say it now, I'm losing my thought. They're neurotypical students on college campuses, so they're the same age, 18 to 29. So there's a peer relationship there that the programs try to promote. So what kind of disabilities do we talk about? Well, it's intellectual and developmental. Typically, there's a specific learning disability that student doesn't have or has. It could be related to IQ. It could be having autism, Down syndrome, other neurodivergence, and that's why I got confused on neurotypical, because I read that word, and I got a little sideways there. But the students that come, they interact with the entire university, and that's what's really exciting about this piece, is they work with their peers. They're working with their peers to do things like on-campus organizations, volunteering, internships and externships. The college experience, the students' experience, is just incredible. Extracurricular activities, there's a peer mentor programs that are at universities of Best Buddies, if you've ever heard of that, which is typically found in the high schools, but there are programs that are getting into the universities and starting to peer up with the individual with intellectual disabilities. So again, it's a peer experience. What the programs really want is they want an employment piece at the end. They want to look at workforce readiness. They want to see outcomes in development of work skills and the transition to work after they're done. So let's look at a national picture. Top right-hand corner, you can see this is actually from, I think this is 22. This is from Think College. They're the kind of the parent of all inclusive higher education programs is what we'll call them. You can see most of the programs are in the East and in the South. We do want to highlight the institutions in the state of Tennessee, which you can see is on the left. So great programs at Next Steps at Vanderbilt, Lipscomb, the Access Program, Tiger Edge. Dyersburg is not listed here. They should be, but they're a relatively new program, and I don't think have any students quite yet. They're still trying to develop their program to get off the ground. So we want to highlight this piece because this is not just in Memphis. This is throughout the state and throughout the country as a movement. Okay. I like this graph, and I would hope everybody kind of takes a look at this. This is the enrollment and graduate numbers of the programs across the state since 2011. The Tiger Life program, you can see, opened in 2015. But if we look at the bottom line, the total of students who have gone through the program, the University of Memphis has accepted, graduated, or is continuing currently, is about 335 total students. And you can see that there's some peak years there where it was quite a few. Majority of the programs are, Union Edge is a little bit bigger, as well as Next Steps and Futures at UT. But we have the largest group to come through. And that's very interesting. I think it's about half, if you look at that. And I want to speak to that piece here in a second as we move forward when we talk about the Tiger Life program. So this is more specific about Tiger Life. It's continuing education. We look at job readiness, We build relationship with our peers. We're recognized as a CTP, which I mentioned before, which is a college campus transition program. That plays into the fact that the students can receive Pell dollars, and also it allows them to get the Step Up Scholarship. We're going to talk about that in just a second. It's to provide, the goal of Tiger Life is to create meaningful, competitive, integrative employment outcomes. And that's what the Institute's based on, is outcome-based, data researched. The Institute strives on this piece to be able to justify having a program and why a program is important to have on a college campus. There's some criteria there. You must have a documented IEP, and you have to have a desire to be gainfully employed. We asked this question about coming into the program. Do you want to go to work? And it's a very simple question. And most of the students, I'll say 90% of them say, yeah, I want to go to work. And that's a really impressive thing about the clients, the students, the customers that we have in the program. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so workforce readiness, university activities. We're looking at an independent living piece, hopefully in the summer of '25. A couple of the programs in the state of Tennessee do have residential. Lipscomb does, as a matter of fact. Vanderbilt does an on-campus, off-campus, I believe, right now. We're going to have an on-campus living experience, and we're really excited about that piece. A completion certificate, classrooms, they can audit a class. I'll tell a story here in just a second we get to that piece. It's 4 semesters, 2 years. The internships, and then we have the post-employment program at the end where we help the individual get a job at the end of the time that they're with us. So here's 2 individuals. Otis White, I worked with his family when I was in the Tiger Life program, worked very closely with his financial aid piece, guided them through filling out a FAFSA, made sure that they had completed their Step Up Scholarship, and also made sure that their vocational waiver was taken care of. So in that role, as kind of that administrator for finance, I just made sure they were following through what we asked them to do. Otis ended up working for the Grizzlies, and that's a fantastic organization, and has hired many of the students, not only with like ServPro, but actually with the Grizzlies themselves. So it's a very exciting piece, or Service Master, excuse me. So he was really excited. He still works there. The other one, James Yates, he just recently graduated. He is a Best Buddies ambassador. He sits on their council as an individual with a disability. I saw him just the other day. We had a transition fair at the university, and he was there promoting Best Buddies as an organization that promotes that peer mentorship and collaboration. It's nice to see the faces of the students, to be able to see them and recognize the fact that they don't look so different than me, and how we have to embrace that piece of someone who has an intellectual disability, and that they want to work, they want to be contributing to society, and this is just evidence of that. So here's tuition and financial aid costs, and I thought it was an important slide to put in for you. Again, we've got a 4-semester coursework cost, there's wraparound cost, inclusion cost, and then the additional cost for taking an audit class. We talked about today, the commission talked about tuition. We looked at other tuitions from our peers within the state and came to this full-time, kind of part-time type of cost structure for tuition. We're still probably the most reasonable program in the state, but it's important to know that we did our due diligence in looking at where our tuition costs should be, and it kind of mirrored what we saw the presentation earlier today. So the State of Vocational Rehabilitation, Department of Human Services provides a waiver. We get the Step Up Scholarship, which is a derivative from HOPE. Mayor Haslam pulled that piece off of HOPE and provided a scholarship for a person with an intellectual and developmental disability that wanted to go to post-secondary, a tuition waiver, a stipend. They've got 16 months to use it. So there is an onus to utilize that as they're transitioning from secondary to a post-secondary program. Again, being a CTP, a college transition program, they can apply for Pell funding through their FAFSA application. All right, so here's the highlights. We've had 314 students complete the program as of May 24. We boast an 86% retention rate. We find that there's a less reliance on Social Security income or Social Security disability insurance. That's proven in the data. The impacts on the social economic issues, there's independence, there's contributing to society. We looked at the state numbers and the national numbers for unemployment with people with disabilities. State of Tennessee, around 16%. Nationally, it's around 20%. Okay, so here's the big reveal. We boast 70% placement between 90 and 120 days after the student completes the program, and that's per VR standards, that they want to place that student by the 90-day mark they want. We stretch it out to 120 to give us a little bit more of an opportunity. But that's, somebody said where the rubber hits the road. This is where the rubber hits the road. We are producing a person that goes out and is adding to our community by working. And it's really, really critical. That workforce piece is so important, driven by data. As a doctoral student at the University of Memphis, getting my degree in leadership in higher education, hopefully spring 25. We're moving toward it. This is a little bit part of my dissertation, is where I studied this piece about employment rates, looking at through a regression and trying to understand that. So we track these things at the Institute itself as data-driven. That's really all my presentation today. I want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present, and I'd like to take questions and answers, questions from anybody, and hopefully provide you some answers.
Any questions for Mr. Krolik? Yes.
Just a comment. Boy, this represents the best of who we are as Tennesseans, in my opinion. So thank you for what you do. And I know other institutions like UT Knoxville and other have these type programs. This isn't an action item, but I would hope that as a commission, we could just be fully supportive of these types of initiatives across our state, because they're making a very real difference in the lives of people and families. So great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to add that a couple of years ago, I had the fortune of traveling out west to West Tennessee and to visit with Tiger Life with the commissioner, Brad Turner, who's now the Commissioner of Aging and Disability. The agency has changed its name, but he is such a champion for this work, and it's great to see it up front, especially as its connection, again, to the lottery scholarships, as you mentioned, the Step Up scholarships. But there's a number of these across the state, as you alluded to earlier, and was it a month ago? I was in Dyersburg and went to Dyersburg High School with Commissioner Ullman and got to see a high school program that I'm sure might be a pipeline into Dyersburg State Community College as well. But there's so much action in this space. It's just really fortunate that we got to hear from this today, so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you very much. I do appreciate your time. And I think all we want and ask for is your support. Is that through grant writing? Is that through funding? We just need your support, commissioners, to be able to keep this movement going. And I want to thank you.
Thank you. Next up, our final agenda item is other business. If any commission members has any other business, yes, Comptroller.
Madam Chair and members, thank you for the great work today. It strikes me as we sit here and as I have sat here and looked out in the audience, I notice we have President Boyd, we have President Licari, we have Chancellor Tidings. I know we're closing in on noon here, but I think it's just a shame to have them here. We heard from Dr. Hardgrave, and Dr. Hardgrave, thank you and your team for having us here at the Lambuth campus. But I think it would be great to hear just a moment from these other presidents who have traveled so far to be here, just to share what's on their mind and heart and thoughts as we have our last commission meeting of the year, if there are no objections.
Please. President Boyd.
Thank you, Comptroller. I just took a quick survey and I got nominated. So I'm counting on being able to make a few comments, and all my colleagues in the back will be doing thumbs up or nodding their head positively. So looking around to make sure that happens. 3 quick comments. First off, thank you, Executive Director Gentile, for leading us in that conversation around financial aid. There was a great presentation where he showed all the different ways in which we could invest in our students. And one of the things, Tara, that you talked about at the start was how we need to be laser focused on access and success. And I can't think of a better way for us to make an investment in our students to make them more, provide more access and more success than being able to increase our financial support for them. So I just want a color commentary on that list. First, it wasn't an easy list to come up with. Stephen went through it very succinctly, but there was a list that was probably twice as long of other options. All of the LGIs, UT, TBR all came together, spent a lot of time negotiating, debating, and developing that list. So this was something that we put a lot of effort into. Second thing to note is that we all support it. So this isn't just something that the staff is recommending, but not only is the THEC is supporting it, but every single university is supporting it. Third thing, I think it was Commissioner Stafford that made the comment, well, Stephen, how are you doing in promoting this? What I'd like to suggest, maybe for the commission to consider, is that maybe you help him by maybe taking a stand and making maybe a resolution or an endorsement on this idea, because I've been at this about 17 years now in the college access and success business. I don't think in the 17 years I've ever seen a more historic opportunity to make a difference in access and success for our students. $100 million a year in additional financial aid. This is an incredible opportunity. And again, appreciate Stephen's leadership there. Second comment was on something we've already talked about, and that was just maybe rethinking how we do capital. And we've already had the conversation, so maybe I would just suggest that maybe the commission ask the staff to come back to you with a few possibilities about how we could rethink this. And again, it's not necessarily revolutionary. It could be something that other states are doing, but I think it'd be good for us to look at other examples of other programs. And the third thing, and there's no action, just to put this on your radar, but I don't believe we can get where we need to be the way we're doing things, the way we are currently. A couple of things with the UT. I speak for UT, but I think my other colleagues could say share similar stats. So our goal is to go from 72,000 students today to 71,000 by the year 2030. So we've grown by 16% in the last 5 years. We expect another significant growth between now and 2030. We're going to need more space for that. We've also got older buildings. I heard the comment about our age of our TCATs. We've got 1,020 buildings. The average age is 67 years old. We've got 290 buildings that are over 60 years old, and we've got 60 buildings that are over 100 years old. So we've got an aging plant. We've got $1.3 billion in deferred maintenance. Going forward, we've got a backlog or a plan of about $3.7 billion worth of buildings that we need to build to help maintain that growth. Over the last 10 years, we're thankful that we've been getting on average about $70 million a year for new capital. But you do the math, we can't continue to grow. We can't replace the buildings we have the way we're doing things now. We have an opportunity. The state of Tennessee and the universities have incredible balance sheets. If we can unlock those balance sheets by being able to take on some debt, either institutionally or at the state level, we can help, I think, address this backlog. So again, no action item, just wanted to share that observation that if we're going to continue to maintain the infrastructure we have, if we're going to continue to provide the opportunities for more students to get a great education, we're going to have to think of new ways in which to finance capital. And so I wanted to share that concern and that thought with you. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, President Boyd. Just a touch on, yes, President Kari.
Thanks for the opportunity to say a few comments from Austin Peay State University's perspective. I'm going to echo a few things that President Boyd just mentioned. The importance of access and the resulting pressure on infrastructure and facilities that creates. Austin Peay, we're very proud to be the state's fastest growing university right now. Our overall enrollment is up 8.2% compared to last year, and a growth rate of 16% over the last 2 years. We're very proud of that in reaching more of Tennessee's students and providing them an opportunity to go to college. 40% of our freshman class, at least 40% of our freshman class this year is first generation, first in their family to go off to school. And most of our students are Pell eligible. So they're coming from households where we give them an opportunity to really change their lives. Very, very proud of that. But we need to grow in our capacity to be able to serve those students. We need to be able to grow in our capacity to continue to meet workforce needs. You know, students in the door is great. We need to make sure we have the program offerings that were aligned with workforce demands. We do a very good job, I think, in ensuring that alignment, but we also need the physical space and facilities in order to educate those students in the way they need to be educated so that they graduate and go off and get a good job. One example of that is our health professions building that was funded a couple of years ago and is poised to open next summer to be able to consolidate all of our health-oriented academic programs into a state-of-the-art facility. We have others, and you can see the list of needs that universities have. These aren't frivolous needs. These are educational facility needs that are linked directly to our program structures that are linked to workforce demands, right? So a lot of thought goes into those capital projects. We need to figure out a way for us collectively to be able to respond a little bit more quickly and assuredly so that as the president of the university, I can respond to business leaders in the state of Tennessee to say, I can deliver something that will help you hire your next wave of workforce. So, these are, things that are going on at Austin Peay State University that mirror, I think, pretty much the rest of my colleagues' concerns right now. So thank you for the opportunity.
Chancellor?
Thank you for giving us a moment to talk a little bit about our system. And I do want to talk about our projects and where we are because that is the biggest thing that we have going on right now. The 29 projects are all under contract. We are breaking ground on every single one of them, and I'm again very proud to say that we are under time and under budget. So we're ahead of schedule and still under budget on those projects. We do still expect to be completely finished with all those projects by 2026, and to me that is just a remarkable tribute to our facilities group and to all of the contractors that we have worked with across the state of Tennessee. I cannot say thank you enough to each of you that approved those projects, that brought those project ideas forward, that helped the governor in thinking about those projects, and then to our legislators that voted forward. They are essential to what we're doing every single day. We're awfully very proud of the fact that our workforce training hours, this is in addition to our 4-credit students that we have every year. We did over 1 million hours this past year. That's the most that we've ever done. We continue to increase those numbers every single year. I'm proud that we're meeting the demand of business and industry in the state of Tennessee. And I'd like to clarify one point that I made earlier when I spoke about the 11,000 students. That's actually our turnover rate per year where the graduation are moving through the system. We have over 28,000 technical college students every year in the system. So those are continuing to grow. That's almost a 15% increase this year. And that is a testament to the fact that we're given additional space where we could accommodate the students that we've had on that wait list. If y'all remember the huge wait list that we've had every year for our technical college students, we're continuing to work that down. Very proud of the fact that our community colleges are back up in enrollment. That was a COVID downturn that we had to work through, and we're back. The students are coming out and they are enrolling at greater numbers ever than before, so we're really proud of that. Thank you for talking about our workforce hours, for putting through those suggestions that Stephen put forward for THEC, and we look forward to what the outcomes will be with that when we work with our legislators. So thank you very much.
Anyone else that I'm missing in the audience? I do want to touch on 2 things. One, for the funding ideas, Dr. Gentile, are you going to be able to provide us some more context or information and kind of talking points, for lack of a better term?
Yes, I can do that. I can send that out early next week for you.
Wonderful. And the other thing, and just to be very clear, President Boyd, actually asking for a recommendation for a capital outcomes-based type formula. Good. Any other business? Thoughts, comments before lunch? All right, we are adjourned. Yes.
Three
never
quick
mind.
comments.
Dr. Gentile,
Jackson State
gentlemen.
Community College tour at 12:30, if you're able. You'll hear from President Rothstein, who's had the highest growth in community college this year at 17%. We have a budget hearing for higher education on Tuesday.